Greetings all, Paladin here. Happy Sunday. This is always a difficult day for me because it's the anniversary of the assassination of our greatest president to date, 57 years ago. And we've got a special show today with Christopher Fulton, author of The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of the JFK Assassination. And before we get to all of that, we also have a very, very special guest. Birthday girl, are you out there?
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
How old are you today?
I'm 9.
9?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you probably don't know this, but when you get to be 9, that means that you are eligible to be considered for the White Hats. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Well, so we had a virtual meeting this weekend, and we all took a vote, and it was unanimous. And so you are now an honorary member of the White Hats.
Good, because Mom told me the White Hats are good.
So congratulations. Well, I'm glad your mom told you that. Now, you know that we all have code names, right?
Yes.
Yeah, your mom's Lady Justice, and I'm Paladin, and that guy that's you guys went to see on vacation at the lake a couple months ago, you know, the guy that has the funny Southern accent?
Yeah, TV.
Yeah, Truth Bomb. Yeah, he's got a code name too. So I see that you have your new icon and your code name up. So do you want to tell us anything about how you chose Little Kraken?
Because I'm like, I don't really like Little Justice. So since Singing Powell released the Kraken, so I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna release myself.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Now, you've been following all of this, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you know who Sidney Powell is, you know who Rudy Giuliani is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you think President Trump's going to win this contested election?
Definitely.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's good to hear because I think so too. We did a video we released, I think yesterday or the day before, about masks. Do you wear a mask when you're outside?
I only wear a mask once in the zoo to get my arm painted. But yeah, that was the only time I got to wear a mask.
Okay. So otherwise you don't wear one.
Well, we don't wear them exactly, so.
Okay. You're pretty smart. I have to give you that. Now, Mr. Fulton would like to talk to you. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
Okay.
He was the one who wrote a book, and my mom read it.
Yep. A book about. Yep.
My mom really likes him.
Yeah. He's pretty good. He's a pretty good guy, and he's given us a lot of good information about JFK. So, Christopher, do you want to come in and say hi to Little Kraken, our newest member of the White Hats?
I do. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Well, listen, you sound like a very special young lady, and I know this is a special day for you as well. And I just wanted to say a very happy birthday to you. And I want to say that your mother is a very special person, and that she's a very great American, and that I appreciate both of you very much. And I know that your mother loves you with all of her heart.
She does love me with all her heart. Like, she protects me from everything. And yeah, she is special because one of these days, all the people that hate Trump will come to us saying, "Oh my God, you were right. I can't thank you. It's so big because you already told me."
Well, your mother loves I know she loves you very much. And speaking as a parent myself, all we want to do is protect you and give you a great future, and have you rise to your own level of your abilities in the world, and to have peace. And so we're working very hard on your behalf to try to make that happen for you and every young child around the world, not only Americans, so that you have that opportunity that we had for you and that it can continue. So I want to let you know that your mother's working very hard on that regard, and so am I, and so are many others. And we appreciate your support, and it's you and others like you that we work so hard for. So again, I wish you a very happy birthday.
Thank you. That was the most beautiful speech I ever heard.
Okay, so
I appreciate that.
yeah, that's a pretty high compliment, Christopher. Okay.
Well, it's the truth. It's the truth. And again, it's very nice to meet you. Very nice to hear your voice. And again, a very, very happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Okay, little Kraken, before we sign off here, do you want me to sing happy birthday?
I mean, only if you want to. You don't have to.
You are so sweet. Christopher?
I'm looking forward to you singing it as well, Paladin. Go ahead.
Okay, I thought you were gonna serve as background vocals, but I guess you're gonna let me down.
You need to look at the contract more carefully, Paladin, next time you.
Yeah.
But I don't like own your rights, so you don't have to if you don't want to. So
Now we're into rights. My gosh.
Right. She's I think she's either going to grow up to be a good politician or the president, or a good attorney. Okay. Everybody close your ears. You can sing in here, Christopher. You can come in there if you want. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, little Kraken. Happy birthday to you.
There you go.
Thank you. And happy birthday. We will protect you, and we will make sure that you have a bright and free future.
Okay.
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 Do you have anything you'd like to say to everybody before you sign off?
Yes.
Okay.
Trump 2020.
All right. Trump 2020. Okay. You are very smart. All right. Goodbye. Have a happy birthday. Okay, everybody. We're going to get on with the show now. As I said before, this is always a tough day for me because I was alive when this happened. And I'm going to share just a little bit today to get the show kicked off. And then I want to turn it over to Christopher and Lady Justice and let them give some thoughts. But I was a second grader in school, in elementary school. And I remember that my thoughts at that time it was the Friday before Thanksgiving, similar to this is the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And my birthday is in December. So Thanksgiving, and then my birthday, and then Christmas. So this was kind of an exciting time for me when I was younger, because my grandfather's birthday was the day before mine. So we both got to celebrate our birthdays together. So we had just gotten back from lunch, and we were in our classrooms, and the classrooms all had the clock was above the door, and the speaker for the PA system was above the door. And so I don't even remember what we were talking about, but the principal came on the loudspeaker system at 12:47 Central Time and informed us that the president had been shot in Dallas, and that they didn't know if he was going to live or not, but he would give us further information whenever he got it. As a 7-year-old at that point in time, we sort of just looked around. We didn't really know what that meant. The teacher left the room. She went out. We could see her in the hallway talking to some other teachers. And then a few minutes later, they all went out of our view. So we assumed that they went down to the principal's office to maybe listen to the radio to get more information. And then probably about 20 minutes later, she came back into the room, and she didn't really say anything. She looked very, very solemn, very somber. And when she was gone, we were all trying to figure out what it all meant. We didn't know if that meant that Nixon was going to be president. If something happened, we really didn't know. And about 12:15 or about 1:15, the principal came back on and said that we were dismissed for the rest of the day. So at that point, we still didn't know whether the president was alive or dead. Both my parents worked, so I went home with one of my friends, and we turned on the television. And by the time we got to his house, we got the word that the president had passed. And so my mother, after she got off work, she came to pick me up. And I know Lady Justice has heard some of this story 100 times. She took me home. We went home. My father wasn't home yet. And every night, my mother, she worked in an office. She was a secretary. So when she came home, she would always go in the bathroom and take off her clothes and change her clothes. And she would take her makeup off, and then she would come out. And in that interim time, when we heard that the president was dead, my friend and I started talking about that. And I know some of you maybe can think back the first time in your life when you realized, or you were faced with the thought of what death meant. It could be a relative passed away, grandfather, grandmother, or a close friend. And at that point in time, I think the first time you start thinking about what that means, where does that person go? How do they carry on? What happens next? And for me, it was the first time that I thought about death. And so it scared me. I was very scared. So while my mother was while she was in the bathroom changing clothes and taking off her makeup, I was hiding underneath her and Dad's bed, because I thought to myself, if they can get the president, they can get me. So it was obviously, as you can tell, a very traumatic experience at that point. My father eventually came home from work. We were glued to the television set. At that point in 1963, we only had 3 networks: ABC, NBC, and CBS. So we were watching TV to get any news. Of course, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. That was our only source of information. And they had the cameras set up at, I believe it was Andrews Air Force Base. And we had heard prior to the landing of Air Force One about Jackie had blood on her suit, but she refused to change clothes. So everyone was sort of waiting to see that. And at that point in time, the reporting was kind of slow from the standpoint that there weren't really a whole lot of reporters that were on the ground. So the the news channels actually had a studio, obviously where the cameras were, but they didn't have cameras in the newsrooms. So it took a while for them to get the cameras up into the newsrooms so that the reporters who were on the phones were getting minute by minute updates from all over the place. Well, anyway, so they were at Andrews Air Force Base, and I remember when Air Force One landed, and they rolled the elevator over up to the door. They put the casket on the elevator. Then we saw Bobby. They lowered the elevator and took the casket off and put it into the ambulance. And that was the first time that we got to see the blood on Jackie's suit. And it was a pretty traumatic experience. It was interesting because you couldn't see it, but you could hear a helicopter in the background. And there was some speculation that the helicopter was going to take the body to Bethesda for the autopsy. But actually we saw the autopsy the casket being loaded into the back of the hearse. Jackie went over to open the door to get in the hearse. I'll never forget, the door was locked. They finally unlocked it so she could get in. But we got a good look at her dress and the blood on her dress and on her skirt and on her legs. Once the hearse left the area, then Lyndon Johnson went over to a bank of microphones and started talking. And as a 7-year-old, I listened and I really studied what he was saying. And the impression that I got at that point in time was he was not sincere about anything that he was saying. So over the course of the weekend, the news, the TV was all about the assassination. They were either showing scenes from Dallas, or they were showing scenes from Washington, D.C. The Dallas scenes were designed, in my mind now looking back, to show us Oswald. They had all kinds of information about Oswald. They were very quick to tell us that Oswald had defected and gone to the Soviet Union, and that he had acquired a wife. And at some point during the weekend, we got to actually see Marina, and they had a newborn baby, and she was carrying the baby. And of course, that was made a big deal about Russia. And they never came right out and said it, but they were intimating that Russia could be involved with the assassination of our president. We moved to Saturday, and the president's body was moved to the rotunda. We're still going back and forth between Dallas and DC. Dignitaries, government officials then became prominent as they were interviewed. And I'll never forget, they talked to Eisenhower, and Eisenhower said a very strange thing that I don't know that anybody caught at that point in time, but he said something to the effect that the American people will not be fooled. And I look back on that now, and I wonder if he meant that we wouldn't be fooled into believing that this was a lone assassin that killed our president. So in the meantime, they kept parading Oswald out so everybody could see him. The Dallas Police Department was just it was a riot in there, from the standpoint that the halls were filled with newscasters, and every time they moved Oswald from one place to the other, we got a glimpse of Oswald for 5 or 10 seconds, and of course the newscasters would throw out questions to Oswald, and he said, no, I never killed anybody. The policeman hit me, and he said, at one point he said, I'm just a patsy. So we move into Saturday night, and they're talking about moving Oswald from the Dallas Police Department to the county sheriff. And there was talk that they would do that on Saturday night, but they consequently left that decision overnight, and they decided they would do it Sunday morning. And I remember when they finally moved Oswald, I was sitting in the living room with my father, and I remember when they brought him out, and Ruby cut into the picture, and you hear the gunshot. And there had been talk prior to that. As a matter of fact, one of the announcers, and I don't know which channel we were watching, had indicated that there had been a phone call made, an anonymous phone call made to the Dallas Police Department that if you move him, we're going to kill him. And they had announced that prior to them bringing Oswald out in front of the TV cameras and Ruby consequently shooting him. Well, the ambulance came in, they rushed Oswald off to the hospital, and it was about 2 hours, I believe, that we found out that Oswald had expired. Now, in the meantime, the interviews were with Jesse Curry, the Dallas police chief. I'm not sure if Decker was interviewed or not. I don't recall. He could have been. Will Fritz was interviewed. He was the head of homicide for Dallas PD. Henry Wade was the Dallas County prosecutor. And of course, as we went through the weekend, they were all sure that Oswald had done it. They could deduct that or deduce that or figure that out in a matter of hours. And I'll never forget them saying that. And I just thought, this, even as a 7-year-old, I thought this does not seem like a country where you are innocent until proven guilty. But when they killed Oswald, that solved the problem. And of course, we got the information that Ruby had done that because he said he wanted to save Jackie from having to come down to Dallas and testify in court. Nobody believed that, I don't think. And then Monday, they had the funeral. And it just, the whole nation, probably the whole world, hearts broke when they saw Jackie lean down and whisper something to John Jr. And then John saluted his father's casket. It was a huge point. It was a huge, huge thing. It was just devastating to everybody. And then the casket taken down to Arlington. Blackjack, the horse, the riderless horse that drew the cash-in down with the boots turned backwards in the stirrups. And once the funeral was over on Monday, we got to Tuesday and it's back to normal. Everything's back to normal. So we lost a president. Our freedom was put in severe jeopardy, all in the space of 3 or 4 days. It was all finished. There was not going to be a trial. There was not going to be any inquiries. Eventually, we heard later on after Thanksgiving that Johnson was going to try to appoint a commission to determine what happened. That was, as we later learned, the Warren Commission, which got debunked almost as soon as the 26 volumes of information were released and read by various researchers and investigators. But that was timed right before the 1964 election, so he could be kept clean and be exonerated if anybody thought he was involved, so that he could win election. And he did in 1964. He beat Barry Goldwater in a literal landslide. And of course, we all know what happened after that. We went to war in Vietnam. And that brought us the 1960s and all the issues that went along with that, Kent State and some other things. And then Nixon came in and we finally got out of Vietnam. And then Nixon wasn't impeached, but he would have been had he stayed and not resigned. And now 57 years later, we are still dealing with the cancer that caused the death of our 35th president. And, every November, every year after that, there were always books, there were always movies that always come out during that time frame and are always timed for that. And my mother used to always give me the heads up. She always would look and do some research and let me know that so-and-so is going to have a book out or so-and-so is going to have a documentary. And so I always kept up with it and accumulated lots of books, lots of information, white papers, lots of documents. And I would like to see us solve this and make it public and bring those responsible to account before my time is done here. So, okay, with that, Christopher, I'll turn it over to you, and you can say a few words and make an introduction.
Well, I just want to mention the fact that I listened to you intently, and your experience of that. And as a child, you made the statement that you hid under the bed, and that they can get the president of the United States, they can get all of us. That's exactly what they've done. The other thing you mentioned was that the salute by JFK Jr. I remember going through thousands of the president's personal photographs. One of a series of photographs I remember was a Marine that was showing JFK Jr. how to salute, and they were practicing that in the Oval and the White House. And your rendition of that memory brought that back, and how emotional all that was for me, of having evidence put into my possession that changed the official story of the assassination of our president. It was a heavy burden placed upon me to figure out the best way to address this and eventually get this opened up with the American public. As you can well imagine, there wasn't many people in an official position happy about what was going on and willing to say, listen, let's open this Pandora's box and change not only the official story of the president, but everything that came after. Let's just fix that, shall we? And there's not many people that wanted to do that. There was a few. One of those was Mr. Reagan, who at his core was a true American and a patriot. He suffered a assassination attempt on him for purpose, to bring George Bush into the White House. And he suffered all of that with grace and dignity. There was an exploding round that was shot to the president that did not go off. The Secret Service did their job this time. They rushed him immediately to the hospital, not to the White House. And the doctors' hands were shaking as they removed that round that had not exploded. And he survived. Another person that was very interested in getting this information out to the American people was General Alexander Levitt, who was the head of the intelligence services and was the front runner for the presidency of Russia. I had met with him in the Kremlin, and the Russians, from their side, had always been interested in getting the truth of this matter to the American public to eliminate them of any wrongdoing. There's a lot of story involved in this, including how Oswald got into Russia and the ferrying out, or trying to ferry, the attempted ferrying out of a mole within the CIA. But the Russians are no fools, and they understood this process and put a lot of pressure on Lyndon Johnson to come clean. That the Russians wanted to be absolved of this. And Lyndon Johnson was forced into coming up with what they call the Warren Commission, pretty much blackmailed Earl Warren into putting his name on this piece of garbage. And this was put out not for the American public, but to conclude that the Russians had no direct involvement in this, was a lone assassin, and they were off the hook, and they weren't going to have to be on high alert that somebody in the Pentagon was going to follow through with a plan that President Kennedy was faced with during his administration, which was to send missiles over to Moscow, destroy Moscow, and destroy China. President Kennedy faced the most dire situation that the new president, a young president, could probably face. So much weight was placed upon him. And of course, the CIA knew when he came into office, which of course they all knew that his father had helped get him in there, that they felt that he had stolen the election in 1960, and that he did not belong there. And he'd have to go along with the plans that were in place. Of course, President Kennedy didn't want to go along with those plans. And they kept trying to embarrass him and hurt him and cause him all kinds of trouble. But the president realized that the insanity was that the plans were, and this came out of Great Britain after the war, that if you took out Moscow, you took out the leadership of Moscow, that communism would fall. And you take out China at the same time and eliminate all of that threat at one time. Of course, hundreds of millions of Americans would die in this process. Bobby Kennedy said no. And the president agreed that this was insanity. And so there was other ways to deal with this. One of those things, one of these conflict resolutions the president had come up with was the special forces. The special forces are allowed to operate very precise tacticians, military, not only on foreign soil, but on here at home, domestic, which would eliminate the internal threat that the president perceived from the CIA and the elite establishment he had to deal with directly, and an ongoing battle for power and direction and what was constitutional and what was good for the American people. The president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was a constitutional president, and he was not going to back down to the powers that were telling him to do these awful, terrible things that would affect the American people, including an operation called Northwoods, which is basically the 60s layout, a plan that we saw later in 9/11. President Kennedy was disgusted by this and said they call us the human race. What's happened recently with Christopher Miller, that's been placed into position of our Secretary of Defense as a Special Forces operative, this is the fulfillment of what President Kennedy intended during his administration and in 1964. These are the operations that he intended to start the process in 1964. The last thing he wrote was government reform. We are going forward. This was a coded message that was given at the trademark in Dallas or Texas Fort Worth to let the Russians know that we are planning to handle these worldwide events in a limited capacity that would defuse the bomb and kill the Cold War, kill the pressure that's being placed upon not only the leadership of Russia, but the leadership of Kennedy's administration to take us to war and to lose many Americans and many populace of these other nations. The insanity of all of this. Why do we have to destroy each other? Why does it have to be a race to always be on top and then wipe everybody else out in the process? Why can't there be some cooperation of understanding so that we can live in peace? President Kennedy said peace is the most important subject that we have, and it still is. President Trump, you could say whatever you like and feel however you like about that, but President Trump was not supposed to be our president these last 4 years. It was supposed to be Hillary Clinton. The military had stepped in and altered the CIA's programs, these rigged programs in the election, and President Trump was put into office. Now, this really upset the apple cart. As far as I understand from the sources that talked to me, that there were many, many attempts on Mr. Trump's life even before he was sworn in. to make sure that, they tried to hit him and kill him before he could get sworn into office. If he hadn't had a private security force, they would have killed him. This private security force is something that I talked with extensively with JFK Jr. JFK Jr. was going to run for office as well. And he talked to me about the importance of my story and my experience to be able to discuss this with the American public of why he could not have the lone Secret Service protecting him, that we had corruption at such a level within the United States that he needed to hire a private security force to protect his life if he was going to run for office. President Trump kept the same plan John was going to use and put that private security force in place. If he hadn't, he would have been killed. I also want to say that I did my best at the time that I was given these responsibilities in the mid-90s to bring the information to the American public that would have changed the official story. I certainly had the evidence in my possession. Mr. Trump was very supportive, allowed us to use Trump Tower in New York to get this information out to the American public, gave me personally his contacts in CNN and so forth. But I, at that time, had already made arrangements with JFK Jr. to transfer evidence to him, and he was going to take this role on. So I declined the interviews at the time. Looking back in retrospect, of course, it's 2020. I should have taken those interviews, and I should have done everything I could to speak out before they cut me off to get that information out. Of course, if John had finished his work on this earth, he would have come out and spoken to the American public and to the world with honesty, with integrity, and spoken to the truth, not only of his father's assassination, his uncle's assassination, what that meant for the country, but also the corruption and the levels at which the American public is just not aware. And that would include what happened in 9/11. John was aware of that before it happened, and he wanted to stop it. This was not an unknown entity, that these towers were slated to come down, and they had the ability to shut off our systems, to put our military into action for the amount of time that it took to hoodwink us on these towers coming down from excessive fuel or heat, which is ridiculous. I used to build high-rise towers. And I could tell you with absolution that you have been lied to on this story. And that this whole 9/11 business was done for purpose. There were deals made. There was gold stolen. And a great deal of theft of our U.S. taxpayers' money and our sweat and labor has been swept away and stolen, and never reviewed by any independent auditor. I have done my best to help one of those auditors from the State Department write their book and get published next year. She has suffered tremendously. She is a federal protected witness at this time. Her boss at one of the foreign embassies was beheaded before the embassy was ever attacked and blown up. It was an inside attack on our foreign embassies. I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to let her book speak for itself when it comes out. But the truth is, the American people, whether you be young and you haven't seen this for a very long time over historical purpose, or you're older and you have seen this over time, we have been betrayed, and we have been lied to, and we've been manipulated, and we have been stolen from. And our birthright as Americans, who brought forth this great freedom that we enjoy in this country, and that we beacon into the rest of the world, there's a great war going on now for that to be extinguished. And I ask every American and every person around the world to step out of their everyday knowledge and what they believe and stand together and not let the freedoms that we hold so dear be extinguished. If we can unify in anything, let us unify on the fact that our children and their future is the most important thing. And if we can come together on that, if we can agree that we have a constitution and it means something that we have a constitution that gives us our rights as citizens, not as subjects. If we can agree on these things, then we can stand together and we can say no, that we're not going to accept a top-down level authoritative system with too many rules and too many regulations and too much separation to put us against each other. We're not going to allow that. We're smarter than that. I'd like to think that we are, and I'd like to think that we can. These problems are man-made, and we can fix them. But you have to participate in this. You can't allow it to be up to somebody else, because the people that you've allowed it to be up to somebody else for decades and decades have proven themselves, and the record stands for itself. They have failed. They do not represent us. I'd hate to think of the average American saying, well, this is who represents me. And you pull out a card out of your billfold and you say, well, this is a murderer, a liar, a thief, a professional deceptor who has no morals and no values. This is the person who represents me and my family. Who represents you? And maybe that was fine for some people that could go around and do that while we're killing women and children in other countries, bombing them because you want to get one target and you unilaterally kill 100 people at a wedding party. Maybe that's fine as long as it's somewhere else, in somebody else's family. But let me tell you this, it's coming to your door now. It's here. These have been turned, these dirty tricks, professional assassins, liars, manipulation of the press, suppression of the truth or any real debate has come home to roost in our country. It is now, we are number one with a bullet. We are the number one target in the world. If we fall, freedom and democracy fall around the globe. I'm just one small story out of very many over time that have sacrificed to try to protect the interest of not only my family, but yours. And I continue to do this and continue to talk and fight for the people that I loved that didn't survive this. My personal lawyer, who had information, sworn affidavits in his safe that went to the President of the United States and to the Attorney General that contained information that would have changed the official story of the 35th President, that said I would agree to turn over these materials to the President of the United States if they would agree to release this to the American public and change the narrative, and they turned me down. He was killed. My fiancée was murdered because she was had possession of recordings in the Oval Office for a short period of time. And they wanted it back while I was locked up under maximum security detention with German shepherds barking at us and people getting their heads split open and dying right in front of me in this country. General Alexander Levitt was killed in a helicopter crash in Russia. Of course, JFK Jr. was murdered aboard his aircraft while I was locked up. How much is it going to take until people put down their cell phones, could overcome their emotional pettiness and bias, and say, listen, isn't peace worth it? Don't we deserve to pass that along to our children? Are we going to allow this generation, our watch to be the one that lets it all go? I'd like to talk a little bit about my book real quickly. The reason I do this is to help inform. It isn't about selling books or talking on shows or anything else. I have no ego in this. My ego was destroyed years ago in prison. I've got no ego left. I don't give a damn about my ego. I give a damn about this country and about freedom and about peace. And that's the only reason I'm motivated to speak at all. Hell, I'm a private, shy person who just wants to spend time with my family and children. And I'm worried, as so many of Americans are, that those days could be cut very short. And so I continue to fight. But anyway, let me talk a little bit about this. In the book, you can see a subpoena that was issued by the Justice Department. It was issued in 1998 by Frank Hunger, who was the Assistant Attorney General at the time, which requested and required and compelled me and others, including Robert White, to bring in objects from President Kennedy's assassination and testify about that evidence. And that we, as private citizens, do not have the right to possess this. Of course, this was the intention of Evan Lincoln, President Kennedy's secretary, Bobby Kennedy, who made her promise that she would keep these materials safe to the right moment in time in history. Of course, he paid with all of that with his life, trying to help this country as well. There was no end date for that subpoena. And when I met with JFK Jr. in Florida and transferred evidence to him that fell outside of the deed of gift to Bobby Kennedy, which means he could use that evidence not only in a court of law, but to bring it to the American public without suppression, without them saying that they had the right title and interest to it, take it and classify it or destroy it, which they did on so many of the other materials from the president's assassination. And these objects and materials that I had, documents, were never put through any of the processes, whether it be the Warren Commission or the Church Committee or the ARB, which is one of the reasons I went to prison, because they didn't want to see the information go through the ARB. Hell, after my arrest, when they extradited me and put me away, they closed the ARB up, made sure that was it, signed, sealed, done. Here's our final report. This evidence will certainly not get in there, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Clinton, Mrs. Clinton. Appreciate that. Especially since you were the ones in control of this. You were the ones in control of Janet Reno, who put me in prison. You were the ones in control of signing these things off on agreements with the Justice Department and my partner on this. You were the one involved with John on this. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, I was supposed to go talk to before circumvent what I was supposed to do, and I go to them first. Of course, Hillary Clinton had a SCI clearance with the CIA, so anything I told her would go directly back to Langley. So I declined that meeting. But there was no end date for that subpoena. When I transferred evidence, crucial evidence, that not only proved the type of round that was used to kill the president, which was an explosive military round, but it also gave direction of where that hit him in the front temple. There's a The explosive round that hit the president in the front of the temple was a very specific military sniper's round. It was used by the Germans and the Russians during World War II. It's an explosive round, and it was used as a final and complete shot fatality. It was so offensive, they outlawed use on the Americans and the British. And most of the time, I guess it was kept very quiet about this kind of atrocity type of round. But what it does, it's very accurate. When you fire it, it hits bone in the head, makes a very small hole, and as it comes in, it goes through the bone, and the bone triggers the explosive device in the round. As it goes through the bone, it explodes. And it's violent. And it's terrible. President Kennedy was hit in the back of the head, but at the same time, he was hit in the front temple. The explosive round came in. The side of his skull came apart fractured from the pressure. There was extreme pressure, explosive shock wave that took place. Brain and blood matter of the president went high into the air, which is not seen on the Zapruder film. They edited that out. Initially, they will claim, if they ever push to the needle on this, they edited that out on the request of Jackie Kennedy. Jackie Kennedy had seen the original film immediately after with a military personnel in the White House. There was a very, very high amount of blood and brain matter that came out of the top of the president's head. And she asked if that could never be seen by the public. That was very offensive, very hurtful for her. The explosion took place, the shockwave was so terrible that when you see pictures of Jackie's face with her mouth open and a gape, she doesn't have time to react to that. That's blown open. Her chin is blown, her mouth is blown open, her chin is blown down, her hat is blown back. And that explosive shockwave hit the wristwatch that he was wearing. It's one of the possessions that I had, which is 5 inches from that round from his forehead. It cracked the crystal, shockwaves, 4 different shockwaves on the crystal of that watch. It blew the hands, bent the hands inside the watch. The explosive military residue went all over it, blood, brain matter encrusted on the whole thing. And on the back of the watch, which you can see a picture of in my book, and I did not talk about it in my book, there's a piece of the shrapnel that went behind the watch and scratched the back, all on the back of the side of the watch. That direction finds the round. I wasn't supposed to talk about that yet, but I need to be more forthcoming as this continues. There's also explosive residue on the president's shirt cuff. That would be the right shirt cuff. It appears as yellow from the explosive residue, again, of the round. It is not blood. That's why the shirt cannot be examined by anybody without specific permission. And that's why other materials that are in the archives are never allowed to be examined for traces of that material, because they don't want the American public to know about that. I also had in my possession the second autopsy, which is claimed to be burned. It was not burned. The second autopsy was signed over by Admiral Berkeley to Bobby Kennedy for his investigation, and to keep record of the fact that they had changed 3 times the president's wounds, the official story. The second autopsy admitted the fact that the explosive round, and then mentioned that a particle of that had come out through his throat. Now, that's what the autopsy said. There may have been a different truth to that throat wound, but that's what they said on the second autopsy, and that's what I stuck to in my book when I wrote it. I did that for a reason. So when I mentioned how the president died in my book very briefly, that the powers that be will know that I had access to the second autopsy and read it. And I stuck to that so they would be aware of that fact, along with many other pieces that are in my book, that that powers that be know that what I had to say is correct. And that's why there's been no authority that will ever challenge it or ever come out and say anything about it. They don't want to open this up. I'd given up every opportunity to discuss this with the Kennedy family. Caroline Kennedy was contacted in '96. Ted Kennedy was notified, and of course, they made the decision at that time that they didn't want to be. They didn't want to acknowledge this. They didn't want to be vetted by Congress or somebody like in the Senate. If Caroline wanted to run for office, she did not want to admit the fact that she had seen this material and was aware that she'd been briefed by me. So therefore, they denied access at that time. I thought JFK Jr. was aware of this. He was not. He notified me later that he had not seen this material and that he was very interested in pursuing this. And that's why I transferred evidence to him and given a recorded interview for him at a later date. And his intention was to allow this to be known by the American public when the time was right. The Justice Department was very concerned that we were going to go to the AG of Texas and try to present this new evidence to get the murder case there reopened. Of course, John did not want to do that at that time. That would have upset the apple cart too quickly, and he wanted to gain much more footing and much more control before he attempted anything like that. So really, the Justice Department, the CIA, the FBI got a head start on us when they realized that Mr. Trump was going to give us the access to make this public in some way, and they jumped the gun very quickly. They brought charges against me that had to do with not filing correct tax information in the United States, as I was working in Canada at the time. These charges were from 1992. I was arrested in 1998 before John's death. And of course, there was multiple reasons for doing this. They brought charges against me. That way, they didn't have to discuss this with a foreign government. The real reason that they put me on the most wanted list for the FBI, they did not have to discuss the assassination materials in my possession. The other reason is if they can get a conviction on me, because they were certainly never going to take me into court of law, if they get a conviction on me, then they can use what's called proceeds of crime to attach any materials that I had. If I paid for them with money, they could confiscate those materials and classify them. My feelings of this country greatly changed when I realized the extent of which they were still willing to go to cover this information in 1998. The people they were willing to murder. The fact that prison saved my life, that they brought me in and had to debrief me to find out what was going on with President Reagan and what was going on with the Russians, who was involved in all this, what was happening with JFK Jr. Of course, I declined to talk about him, et cetera, but they needed to get a handle on this quickly and shut it down. It's a shame that we're not trusted, that we are running a national security state now in this country. And the American people are given no information to make any real decisions for their future, for their family's interest, for their protection. We have been forced to rely on others that are supposed to do their job. And not only are these others not there to protect us, they're there to harm us. President Trump was not supposed to be, like I said, in the White House. He was there, and he stopped several of the operations that were ongoing for many years, set up for many years, and just he simply stopped them. We did not have an exchange with North Korea. We did not, et cetera, et cetera. And instead of being credited for a peaceful resolve, the CIA is angry because he didn't follow agenda. And therefore, they're going to use every power, every resource to attack this man. You know, people think, Americans think, well, geez, we get this guy out of the White House, get somebody else in there, resolve all our problems. Do I really have to say it? I mean, the man's been in that position 4 years. You think this corruption that we have in this country is manifested itself in the last 4 years? That's ridiculous. So you've got a mainstream media. You've got everybody else involved with this, the money and the power system, attacking this man. He's the most attacked individual. Nobody's that good or that bad. Nobody. Most attacked individual sees Jesus Christ. Nobody is perfect, but Jesus, you think you could give some support for our own freedom, for our own well-being? People want to run us off a cliff just because they want this person. They don't like his personality. Well, you know, he wasn't designed as a politician. But I tell you, one of the most positive things I think of the fact is he's outside the Beltway. He's not one of them. He has not been bribed and coerced over 40 years. To me, that's the best asset we could have. One of the points I wanted to make earlier, and I didn't conclude that, was the subpoena that you see in the book. There was no end time to that. When I transferred evidence to JFK Jr., and subsequently was arrested, JFK Jr. was still required to bring in that evidence to the AARB or to the Justice Department. I wasn't supposed to talk about what happened to the evidence, but a reporter had got a hold of it and said, well, listen, you know, it came through his will after he was killed, went on to Caroline Kennedy. So again, John was required by that subpoena to bring that evidence into the AARB, Assassination Record Review Board, or the Justice Department, but he didn't do that. But his plane was sure blown out of the sky. And I sure went to prison for many years in suppression. I was told I can sit and rot in maximum security for 20 years. No trial, no rights, national security concern. They were never going to let me into a courtroom where the American people could be presented with evidence. I said, if you take me to that courtroom, I'm bringing in all guns. I'm bringing in Oval Office recordings. I'm going to show you the contempt that is utilized by this Justice Department, this FBI. And they said they'll never let that happen. They have orders from the White House, from the Clinton White House, to never open up the investigation into President Kennedy's murder or Bobby Kennedy's murder. That is never, ever going to happen. Even though the FBI and the Justice Department are compelled to cooperate with authorities on a state level, this will never happen according to them. And from what I see and from my experience, this is exactly the truth. Not only did I have the evidence to change the story and could have done so if given the opportunity, I was never interviewed by the ARB, although they were compelled to do so. Again, I was put in prison instead of this, and my evidence was confiscated by the FBI, that stuff that remained that didn't go to John. It was classified away from the people that it should go to, which is the American public. We have never, as a nation, demanded the answers to the Kennedys assassinations, to the Gulf of Tonkin incident, to the fact that the President Nixon was forced out by the CIA because he was cracking, 9/11. We have never forced a conclusion on this broken system. And so these people perpetuate themselves and say, well, geez, we've done this. What next? Let's keep this agenda rolling. We can get away with any damn thing we want. We've got so much money around the world that's been stolen. We don't answer to anybody. There's no oversight. We own the media. We can do any damn thing we please. And these people are just going to have to take it or lump it. We've let the government that works for us now be the representatives of the people who want to destroy us. Let me say this. There is more than enough evidence to show that Bobby Kennedy was assassinated by the CIA. There has been an attempt in California to reopen that case. They won't even have a hearing on it. The paper that Kamala Harris wrote that turned this whole thing down and send it off into oblivion, so we can acknowledge the fact there was 13 shots fired out of an 8-shot revolver. We got that. But Sirhan Sirhan would have been convicted anyway. So what difference does it make? Let's not open up old wounds. Let's just move on and not worry about an individual that not only stopped World War III from happening with Russia, Bobby Kennedy, had to suffer the indignity of his brother's head blown off in Dallas while he was saving the nation from exchange with Russia, from these idiots that had preset this whole scenario up, but then gave his life for running in 1968 to stop the Vietnam War. Let's forget about him. Let's not honor him in any way that we can bring the true killer to justice, say who we name him, who we know who he is, and that he's connected to Lockheed Martin and the Central Intelligence Agency. Let's forget about that. Very well done, Mrs. Harris. Let's forget about the politicians that are put in place to power so that none of these cases get reopened, whether it be Texas or California. Let's forget about the idea that people like Justin Trudeau in Canada and other prime ministers around the globe have been put there illegally through falsified voting systems. They're all scared as hell right now because unless they get a control system locked down on you quickly within the next, I think the president signed an emergency order on the 2nd of November. They've got 120 days to try to get us under control. If they don't do this, they're looking at pushback and treason. So either they're going to be the rulers of this new world order, your new royalty, who are going to have to bend everything they say is law, every regulation they put upon us, every boot they put upon our necks, or we have to take this back and call it is what it is and say, listen, this is all illegal. It's fraud. It's treasonous. It's sedition. And we're not going to allow you to run roughshod over us any longer or to be able to take special money. I mean, how the hell do you get into the politics and come out of politics with tens of millions of dollars? Your salary certainly doesn't cover that. Why don't we be like Singapore? I think it's Singapore, one of these nations that pays these guys properly, gives them $3 million a year. And then they wouldn't be so inclined to take this money as bribes. This is a foolish way that we run ourselves, and we've allowed this to happen for too long. And these people are just about to close the loop on us. Once that AI system gets on board, once they got enough birds in the air, that they can put this new quantum thinking AI system on board, now we have to answer to a computer. It's no longer even humanity. I got to take my orders from a system that tells me what to do and how to do it. and there's no way, no authority to address it with. You ever notice that? Try to get somebody on the phone. You have a problem? Try to talk to a human being about it. You notice that there's more and more computerized systems, delays of hours getting it to anybody? This is just the beginning. I would encourage somebody to pick up the book. You can get it at our website at cmfulton.com. I'd like to know who, I'd like to inscribe the book to someone specific. And more than that, importantly than that, many documents are on that website where you could peruse and look at your leisure. Of course, we can only put a small amount. I have thousands of documents. I have been entrusted by other individuals that have been working with the Trump administration with about 14 million documents. I don't look at them. I just am a trusted person to harbor them. But I can tell you that treason has been documented. It exists. It is real. And this has been known for a long period of time. This is not a new, oh my gosh, revelation. But Mr. Trump obviously has been working on a idea to allow the American people to tiptoe into this and to allow these people to show their hand so that he doesn't have to make allegations and stand there alone. His family doesn't have to bear the entire brunt of the risk. I hope we're not too late. I hope we haven't left this to the 11th hour and we can still get through this. There are those out there that just want to say, well, listen, I just want to get this over with. We're tired of the lockdown and so forth and so on. That's the whole purpose, to have these mail-in ballots to be able to go ahead and further ensure what they can do with when they can't do when they have this algorithms running. But people are tired. They want to resolve, and they say, well, let's just get this new guy in here. He'll fix this problem. Doesn't work like that. The corruption is far bigger than the office of the President of the United States. Bobby Kennedy had discussed this with Mr. Reagan years ago. He said, to heck with the Russians, to heck with the narrative. We've got serious problems in this country. We've got serious corruption within this country. We've got to stop this. Of course, Mr. Reagan came to the conclusion after Bobby Kennedy's assassination and after his own assassination attempt that Bobby Kennedy was right. And that's why he had helped in this endeavor and lent his support and was very interested in making sure that this information came out for Americans by Americans, not by a foreign nation, that we fix our own problems, that we stand up, admit our mistakes, because without admitting our mistakes, there could be no correction. There could be no moving forward. There could be no path towards the soul of this country being healed. People look back to the President Kennedy and to Bobby Kennedy as the soul of this nation. It's something that was undefinable in so many ways. We need to recapture that kind of idea. We need to capture that kind of spirit again if we are to survive. Christopher Miller's appointment was 4 years in the making. And really, as I addressed earlier, that we will fulfill President Kennedy's intention of destroying corruption from within our agencies and government and the destruction of our Constitution. I pray that Godspeed to Mr. Miller and to our special forces, who President Kennedy was so so for and so adamant at letting them have the lead, helm the lead, instead of the agency and these private contractors and these warmongers who have no allegiance any longer to the people of the United States. They have a global agenda, and that global agenda is not for the benefit of humankind. It's for the benefit of the very few at the very top. And they are hoping to get rewarded for their participation in this, so that they don't have to be the slaves like the rest of us, or they could be a little bit less of a slave. It's really up to us now. What kind of America, what kind of world do you want? If you allow the powers that be to continue this agenda without interruption, without delay, there will be people in get-togethers in the near future that will say, "Do you remember this? Do you remember when we could do this? Do you remember when we could have the freedom? And now we have just the memories of these things. So let's have another drink and forget about it." I don't want to see that kind of America. And if you don't either, then join us. Stand your ground. Say no. Tell your neighbors to say no. Don't allow someone to come to your neighborhood, your door, to your state and say, "We're going to take your property. We're going to take what you love from you. And these are the new rules. And we're just doing our job, sir. We're just doing our job, ma'am." The Nazis said the same thing. We're just doing what we were told to do. And yet we look back with that with such contempt. How can you not see this? Do you think this will not have some of that same outcome? Do you think the censorship that we see on the internet is no different than burning books? Without debate, without the Second Amendment, without a free press, democracy dies. And the people that you are supposed to trust, our big newspapers, our mainstream media, our elected officials, our people in the agencies that are there to do their job, the people at the top levels, not the people that are operating up to get a paycheck. These are the people at the top levels. They're not doing their jobs. They're not honoring their commitment and their oaths to the American public. They're honoring their oaths to something different. Whether you want to call it the cabal or the New World Order, doesn't matter what you call it. And you can talk about conspiracy theories all day long. But the truth is the truth, and you know it in your heart, and you can feel it. Bobby Kennedy recently came out and said, "I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm somebody who cares and loves this country." He went and spoke in Berlin. You think he went to Berlin for no reason? He went to Berlin to help draw attraction to the fact that we've got American servers, American equipment over there, out of the reach of our Constitution, out of the reach of our rules of law, subverting our democratic process and everything that we hold dear in this country. He also correctly states that if you allow these massive inoculations to come out, and half the country takes this, and half the country does not, and half the country receives, the one that's taken the inoculations receives paperwork that says, "You're going to be rewarded. You can travel in a complete lockdown. You can gain food. You can have a driver's license. You can go to another country. You can get a passport. You can obtain food. You can keep your electricity on. But the people that have not decided to put the poison in their body, if you do not follow this agenda, you become a second and third class citizen. And we will punish you until you capitulate or perish. When you do not have access to food or electricity or water, but your neighbor does because he has followed this agenda, which, by the way, is not going to be one inoculation. It will be many. It will not stop. Where do you think they're going to get that food from? They're going to ask politely. And then it's going to become critical. And so you're going to have us fighting each other, which is perfectly fine with the people at the top. How they're not in the boat that we're in. They never will be. They don't care. They'd rather see our population decrease. Most of these elites believe in eugenics from many, many years back. They think there's too many of us. We're too stupid, too foolish to make decisions even for our own lives, let alone an election. We've got the Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada, for Christ's sake, who has made threats against the United States if President Trump were to somehow legally remain as our commander-in-chief. And with close ties to China, there are rumors out there that the Chinese military might be even coming over. He certainly has talked about the Canadian military being called up. This guy's scared. I've met Trudeau and his father when I was a young man. As far as I'm concerned, he's a traitor and holds no interest for the Canadian public and has also betrayed his nation. When you get these people in power around the world and you get enough money involved, which believe me, there is, money is paper, they print it. Doesn't mean anything. We've got a problem. You think you could get 150 countries in a room at one time and say, we're going to lock the whole world down. You're going to capitulate, make all these deaths, COVID deaths. We're going to pay you all this money. Everybody's going to raise their hand and say, well, we agree with that. We'll do that. We're all on the same page. It's money that makes all this happen. You couldn't get 152, 160 people to agree on anything most times, let alone the leaders of all these different countries. You pay them enough money, though, and you get the corrupt politicians in there, and it's a top-down system. Now we can lock the whole world down. Where do you go now? We stand now together, or we'll spend the rest of our lives in submission or running. And our children will never know the freedoms that we took for granted. The people have died for on the beaches. Jesus, you've got these 18-year-old kids that said in World War II, we will stand up, we'll do our duty. We love this country. We'll stand in a boat and and jump out. We haven't even had a relationship with a young woman yet or had kids or know what anything's about in life, but we'll step out there in front of those hot machine guns. We'll do what we have to do because we love this country. Now they've got us all in such fear, and we quiver and shake, scared. I guess the CIA is saying, if everything works out the way we plan, nobody will ever have the truth. They'll never know the truth of what anything really is. All of this has worked out so well. if you're a billionaire, or if you're born into the right family, or you're bribable or corruptible, and could be utilized. But the people that just want to live their lives in peace, they have the ability to rise to their level of hard work, to have their children to be able to look at them years later as grown-ups, and they'd be proud of who they've become, and every opportunity for their grandchildren, their children to come. This is why we fight. This is why we need to take heed now. If we do not get the popular support of the American people or in the world to push back at this time, there's not going to be in my opinion, another chance. This reset will take place. Digital currencies will come out very quickly in January. They believe they will come out New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and Canada. They're looking at this right now, cashless cryptocurrency by January, and it begins. Paladin, is there anything you'd like to ask of me? I have a discussion between us.
Yeah,
Lady Justice, is there anything you want to bring up?
Yeah, as I watched the evolution of the Kennedy assassination, the Warren Commission report came out first. That started to be debunked. It seems like then they probably figured that they needed to at least show the American public that they were doing an investigation. In the mid-'70s, we had the Rockefeller Commission, we had the Church Committee, and then we had the AARB. Is it your view, based on what you've been through, that those were simply a way to gather information, gather evidence so that they could put it out of our reach like they tried to do or they did with you?
That's exactly what they've done. It's exactly what they did with the AARB. The Assassination Record Review Board was set up by President Bush to bring in it's a specific federal agency. It was given subpoena powers to bring in people and compel them, force them into giving over evidence, whether it was in private hands or anywhere in the world, that would be necessary for them to classify and to confiscate. That's exactly what the whole purpose was. It wasn't an interest to get to say what had happened. It wasn't in the interest of the American public, although they'll tell you that it is, but that's not correct. It's to bring in information and to cover people's asses, to not embarrass the agency, to not embarrass the FBI, to not, etc., etc. That's what this is all about. It's always been about that. And of course, once you have a large embarrassment like the Kennedy assassination, President Kennedy, now you've got such a corruptible, easy way to corrupt people. The presidents that come into line after that are almost like ducks in a row. You know, Lyndon Johnson and there, of course, Bobby Kennedy tried to step up. They murdered him. And then you've got to make sure, Lyndon's got to make sure the right guy gets in there and doesn't blow his cover. So they put Nixon in there. Then they got worried about Nixon being, you know, he's coming apart. He's got some conscience, so he's coming apart. So let's get him out of there. And then Gerald Ford was just lucky to be there. He didn't even know which way was up. He just God, I covered this during the, I covered what they wanted me to under the Warren Commission. So now I'm the vice president. I got to. The first 2 weeks, I don't even think he went to the White House. I think he was at his house, still trying to figure it out. So he goes into the White House, and then he, who does he appoint? Who does he get in there? Mr. Rockefeller. Keep everything, get somebody that knows what's going on. You know, it's very easy to get people manipulated when you have something like that. And you have things on them and so forth. And when you've proven your usefulness and you've proven that you're loyal, of course, you're rewarded for that. They reward you for this, for the corruption. It's not that they catch you on it and prosecute you. You're rewarded for Christ's sake. And the more corruptible you are, the higher you go. That's the way our system works. President Kennedy, his father was at war with the CIA even before he came into the office. CIA was very wary of him. And they lied to him and gave him false intel all the time. And they gave the real intel to Lyndon Johnson. Hell, they wanted Lyndon Johnson running the national security state. They didn't want Kennedy running it. And Kennedy, both the brothers, actually it was a co-presidency in so many ways, but both the brothers were trying to come up with ways around what they were being told to do. And let me say that again. They were given orders under national emergency on how to proceed and what to say and what they were allowed to do. And so they had to come up with ways to fulfill their obligation as constitutional president and to the people of the United States. And this just pissed the community, the intelligence community, and the one percenters. It pissed them the high hell off. They resented these young Kennedys coming in, thinking that they could change the system and throw it back to the people of the United States. Who the hell do they think they are? It was so insightful, so angry, that one of the things that still throws me is when they had the autopsy of President Kennedy, the last order they were giving those two Navy personnel would cut President Kennedy's balls off. They said, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to follow that order. They said, you will follow that order. And so they had to remove President Kennedy's testicles. Now, was that for a trophy? I don't know what that was for, but Jesus. The man suffered terrible indignity. These terrible people won the day, and then they put it all on President Kennedy. Well, he asked for it, or it was his fault. People, there was a part in the movie JFK where Kevin Costner talks a little bit about the speech at the end and says the same thing I'm saying. You have to make the choices. You have to make these decisions. You want to be a slave and allow yourself and allow these brave men and women that have died on your behalf to be meaningless? Martin Luther King's death, murder to be meaningless? If you want that to be your legacy, then allow these agendas to continue, and believe me, they will be. If you want to align yourself with President Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Julian Assange, people that are still fighting, that have tried in every effort to bring the truth to the American public and fight for the people of the world for truth, then stand together now. Don't allow them to destroy everything that we've achieved. Anything else?
Yeah, I did want to make a comment and just bring this to everyone's attention. It was interesting how whenever these commissions were formed over the years, there was always a trickle of information that would come out, and it was always interesting to take that information in the mid 70s or in the 90s and apply it back to 1963. And if you did, you would realize that there was a lot of information that all those people back in 1963 knew about, but they didn't tell us at the time. And so that was always interesting.
That's
and your other point with some of these people is like Arlen Specter. He was a Warren Commission attorney, and he's the one that wrote the magic bullet theory, and he's the one that eventually went to the Senate, I believe, in Pennsylvania. And of course, Gerald Ford was the one who moved the back wound up from up 6 or 8 inches so that Specter could write his magic bullet theory. And of course, we know where Ford ended up. He's the only unelected president we've ever had. So I think it's been interesting.
Don't you love it when George Bush gets up there and he says, the Warren Commission stands. It will always stand as the official story forever because Gerald Ford put his name on it.
Yeah, and whatever Jerry says, you can count on it. You can take it to the bank. And he had a smirk on his face too, and they just put it right in your face. Now I want to bring in Lady Justice because I know she's got some questions for you. So if we can do that, Lady Justice, if you'll come in and question our guest.
Well, hello, everyone. Hello, Christopher. Thanks for coming on today. It's a very special day for all of us listening, and some of us it's special for a few other reasons than what's bringing us here today. I want to thank you both very much for your tribute, I'm going to call it, to my little Kraken. She was so excited and ecstatic about that interview today. She's on cloud 9. So I really thank you so much for doing that. And she has a lot more to say, she said.
Well, I bet she does. It's your mother's daughter. So I was very happy to say 2 words to her. I think she's going to be a pistol. And I think that's fantastic. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, she is very passionate about this country. She's very passionate about what's happening right now. I feel it's very important for her to understand what's happening in this country right now and in this world right now, and how important it is for everyone, whether you're 9 years old today or you're 90 years old today. It's imperative that everyone understand how important it is that we continue to stay on a course that maintains the protection of our God-given rights, and that is something that she understands is vital for her future. And I feel like it's important for every man, woman, and child to understand how important that is. So I wanted to ask you. I did ask some people in the. I put in the chat if anyone has any questions, which I would like to get to that. But I wanted to talk with you a little bit about current day, where we are current day with our current administration, and how that could possibly link to the future that President Kennedy envisioned for our country. And if you look through the information that is out there by the mainstream media and other sources, and the focus on the Russia collusion illusion is what I like to call it. And you see that in at the core of every article that's written, all of the information that's out there, and the bricks that they want to lay for the path that they took to get you to believe that there was collusion going on with President Trump and Russia. There was a core issue that was a focal point for these news articles and for the information that we were given, and that was a trip that President Trump took to Russia in 1996 with a gentleman named Howard Lorber. I believe Leon Black might have been involved in that trip also. But there's a focal point with Trump traveling to Russia. And shortly after that trip, Alexander Levitt, who you've talked about here, made, I think, at least one, maybe 2 trips to see Trump in 1997 in New York City. And I'm wondering if you have any insight on how that might be relative today to their focus on wanting us, the American people, to believe that Trump is, quote, colluding with Russia.
Mr. Well, I could tell you a little bit about what I know. Mr. Trump was asked by the Russians to come in and build a tower there within the government square, the government sector, and they were really interested in getting ongoing business interests with the Americans and having a better relationship with the United States, because they've been, with the Cold War and with the blaming, like I said, at the initial stages by the Pentagon and everybody that was set up in advance. About President Kennedy's death, they were, they put Lee Harvey Oswald in that boat. Not only did they smear Russia, but they smeared the Marine Corps. But they wanted to set the record straight, and they always have. And Mr. Trump was being offered to go over there, including others, to open up kind of this idea that they were they could become part of the U.S. infrastructure and be friendly and do business ongoing and have a better relationship and trade with the United States. This would also help prevent the CIA looking at them as the antagonists of democracy around the world, and as this bad guy, this boogeyman that we constantly throw out there whenever we have a cover that we want to cover for anything. We can throw it off to Russia, and we can always utilize them as the problem. So I think that Mr. Trump was interested at that at one point, but then realized the complications involved with this and the way the American public may perceive this, and decided against it. Now, Mr. Trump's a businessman. He always looks at things at those type of angles, the bottom line, and so forth and so on. And he's a tactical practitioner. A lot of people want to call him all kinds of other names, but the fact of the matter is, he's a business person. He's not he's not a person that you're used to seeing in Washington. And for me, I think that's a good thing, only because I don't want to see somebody that's a Beltway insider in there. They're all, they're corrupted. It's all a rigged game. My grandfather used to say, you can't play an honest game of cards when everybody else is cheating. And that's true in Washington. Decades and decades ago, you might find one good man in the Senate or in the House and so forth, and somebody that had true intentions and so forth. I don't think you find many people now. And nobody good wants to have that job. It's just too damn overwhelming. But to answer your question, I think Trump's intention at that time was honorable, and I think that he did not take that role on over there. And a lot of people want to make a big deal of that. What's good for the Russian people generally is the same as what's good for us. I don't think the intelligence services look at Russia really internally the way that we perceived externally. And I think that China is more of the concern. And of course, one of the reasons why they wanted Donald Trump in there is because of his record with China. He was tough with China in business. He understands them very well. And we wanted to get China under control, and we wanted to have our AI systems out in front of China. We didn't want them running the whole ball game around the world. And so President Trump was really brought in for that. Instead of taking us to war and all these other crazy stuff that Clinton would have done, they had him in there to try to get this done. But of course, he's been attacked mercilessly. I mean, it's amazing. This man has done more in that time in office than probably any president of recollection. And he's just been attacked beyond belief. And I think it's shameful in so many ways. He may not represent himself the way, speak the way you expect him to as a New York businessman. But then again, I'd rather that than somebody lying to me and smiling and being really slick and CIA trained. And I'm getting screwed all the while over, even though I'm getting smiled at and they're speaking well.
Given in your book the information that you wrote about in your happenstance meeting that you had with Alexander Levitt when you were invited to Russia for construction work or rehab work on the flats that they wanted you to come in and take a look at in Russia. Given the information that they seem to have in regards to the JFK assassination and the evidence that was in your possession. And considering that Trump had a relationship with the Kennedy family, mainly in particular JFK Jr., do you feel that there is a connection with that information and the pursuit of the Russia collusion that we saw play out over the last 4 years?
I have to be careful with this question, but I'll tell you this: Mr. Trump in New York was an important personality and business person, and he was going to help John when he was going to run for office in New York. That was part of their discussions. I don't know all the intimate details of it. I wasn't privy to it. I wasn't there. But I can tell you that was taking place, that John was very interested in getting the information that he needed and putting the pressures to bear and overcoming the great obstacle of being allowed the honor to run for senator in New York because the powers that be didn't want him there. So he had to gain information and use that information to his advantage before he could get the permission to even get in there. Okay? So that's what he was trying to do. I can also say with my personal experience that Mr. Trump decided to run and take on this idea based on the fact strongly that they had killed John. They murdered him. And so therefore, that was one of the principal factors in his decision of taking this on for the American public and for his own well-being, for his children and the future of this country, et cetera, et cetera.
So just to clarify, you feel or you have information or feel, I just want to clarify that the reason why Trump decided to move forward with running for president and putting himself and his family through the torture that they've experienced based on him trying to just provide a better foundation for this country was tied to the fact that he had this relationship with John Kennedy Jr. and his murder.
I do know that was one of the deciding factors, yeah.
Okay. I really appreciate you sharing that insight. I know that you're limited on what you can and can't talk about. And I want to make sure that people in the audience understand that it's very important for you to purchase the book that Christopher has written, The Inheritance, Poison Fruit of JFK's Assassination, because if you're wanting some gaps filled, this is an incredible book to read. It's an important book to read. It has a lot of information in it, even though you may have to look in between the lines to understand and assess the information. There is a picture given to you in this book that you will not find in any other book that was written on the assassination of JFK. It's just an incredibly important part of history that we need to understand and that we deserve to have information on. As the American people, it is time that we hold our government accountable for giving us the information that surrounds the mystery of JFK. As I feel, it's the keystone as to why we are where we are now. There was a question in the chat on how far back.
Before we go to that,
Sure.
let me just address something really quickly that's
Sure.
important. Some of the information that has to do with myself and Robert White and what happened through the Evelyn Lincoln Project is what they named it as the code name of that material being transferred to us and around the agencies and around all these people that wanted to know what we had. They've removed the most sensitive materials from the National Archives that was going directly back to the Clinton White House and the direction that was going to justice, and those lawyers back to the ARB. Those materials in that box folder have been removed from the National Archives. I did a 30-day investigation on that. The archives came back and said, yes, we know the folder exists. We know it was supposed to be there. We know that you're involved in that, but it's been removed, and we've got no pull slip from the president or from the CIA or anybody else. It's just gone. That information belongs to the American public. That's your material. That's your national information. Many, and I'm not the only one, many pieces of information have been removed from the National Archives under the direction of the Bushes, etc., that the American public won't have access to now. And when you see these other companies, or you get them, not companies, but companies and systems like the State Department or the NSA and so forth, and they come out and they say, yes, we're under oath, and yes, we've been hacked. Well, are you secure now? Yes, we're secure now. That's a code word for saying, yes, information has been removed from our systems and replaced. We can't tell you what was there before definitively and what's there now is any different. And they remove people's materials of information, and then they replace it almost instantaneously with something else. So the American people, even if they go back now on some of the stuff through 9/11 and everything else, they're going to get false intel. And this is a serious problem. This is treasonous. This is seditious. You know, now they're taking and erasing, just like my transactions with John and things that the Justice Department tried to erase entirely, like it never existed, or the fight I had with the CIA over the recordings and the fact that it was filed on the Fourth Circuit saying that I had to turn over these recordings for classification, and I fought with them, and then I went in finally and capitulated with justice, and they erased it from the docket like it never happened. This is what the American people are up against. I just want to be clear on that.
How do you propose the American people go about addressing something like that? If we, you know, everyone who listens to this show today, what would be your suggestion on how we demand that we have access to that information?
If the powers that be are so ultimately concerned of opening these Pandora's boxes up, even the president now is going to have to deal with this on an unbelievable level. Those people that are working with him right now, the lawyers and so forth, they're being threatened. Their lives are being threatened. I've been through this.
Absolutely.
This is not a cakewalk. You've got the powers of the world falling upon them in every capacity. You got children that go into school. You got some relative that happens to live somewhere else that the IRS can come in and take some. This is a serious problem. They're putting life and liberty on the line for you right now. Trying to bring this through court and legal system. Trying to get the truth to the American public without tipping the lawyers, the CIA, what they're going to do and what they're going to expose. This is unprecedented, and you need to give these people some support, because in the end of the day, they're either going to tell you the truth and you're going to find out what's going on in our nation, or you're not. But one way or the other, don't you want to know? Don't you want to see the truth and know what exists? Or would you rather just turn your blind eye to that and say, well, we're just going to accept the complacency of this and see and hope that it goes in the right direction and everything should work out just fine, put my head in the sand? I had somebody that I trusted in D.C. recently, very intelligent, say to me, I said, listen, you know, we're going to have this and this and this after these ejections and shots and stuff. They said, Christopher, that will never happen in our lifetime. We will never have to have a document to travel, you know, or anything else. It's all this. We have laws and rules of law in this country, the separation of powers. They really still believe this. But to answer your question, I would suggest that you put pressure on the system itself as it stands now and say, listen, let's redistribute. Let's change the laws that redistribute the wealth, because if you've got individuals that are so disproportionately wealthy, or the CIA that has so much covert black money out there, you will never have a democracy under those conditions, because that corrupts absolutely. It buys too much political power. You can't have somebody and you give them billions and billions of dollars of control and expect that they're not going to use it. It's like giving somebody the best, fastest Ferrari in the world. You put your foot into it. It's a lot of fun. They're going to use it. Okay? You can't help but not to. Are they going around the world and helping the world? Well, someone like Bill Gates says that he is, but he's full of you know what, because most of that money gets diverted back anyway, and he wants to look like a philanthropist and all this other stuff, all these other lies. Bill Gates is a lie from the day he was born. Okay? But I would suggest that you cannot... I would suggest that the wealth of the world has to be redistributed according to merit of people around the globe that have the access to be able to rise, who have that American dream where they can rise to their level, gets rewarded for that, but not disproportionately. Where you've got these individuals and companies and families that have stuck together and made such money, such power, that they're going to run the rest of us. That's what we fought for in this country in 1775, 76. We didn't want to be ruled as subjects. We didn't want to be subjects of some great queen and king and authoritarian figures that are going to say, absolutely, this is the law, instantly you're off with your head. That's the end of it. No due course, no process, no debate. But that's exactly what we're going towards. That's exactly what's going to happen if we do not fix this problem. But one of those things is we need to redistribute, not in a socialistic way, but in a way that just allows people to work for it and to get their fair share of the American dream or the dream around the world to benefit their family and so forth. You can't have the wealth this disproportional. It does not operate, and you can't have a democracy this way. It doesn't work. Go ahead.
I agree. I'm going to take you back a few steps in what you were saying in regards to the view that Russia takes on Bill Gates. Could you give us some insight on that?
Well, right now, Russia, is taking the Microsoft software, is torn that up, is trying to get their state-run software in there because they know what's coming and they don't trust Bill Gates. They put him on the security watch list. They will not allow him into the country, and he is looked at as someone as an enemy to the Russian people. They've got it on state television, talking and exposing Bill Gates as to who he is and what he's doing and what's he involved with. The American media is a joke. If you look at foreign media who have intelligence and open-mindedness and debate, look at real facts, and it isn't about their opinion or propaganda, it's refreshing. It's refreshing as hell. But all we have in this country is a propagandized, ridiculous agenda owned by 6 families. That, again, should be changed. Bill Clinton was responsible for that. You cannot allow 6 families to own and operate everything that the American public hear. This is too consolidated, and it leads to corruption, and it leads to absolutionism, and you can't trust this. You've got to open it up to where 150, 200, 500 people have the ability to rise to the level and have an open and honest journalism in this country. We don't have journalism in this country any longer. This is an important part of our democracy. President Kennedy had addressed it many, many times.
Question in the chat for you, Christopher. Debbie W had asked, do you feel if Trump stays president, will all of this be revealed in his second term?
That's an excellent question. Warp speed, was that done to placate the general that was in charge of the Warp Speed program to have the military come out and distribute these vaccines? Said in Stars and Stripes that they would not be doing that. Of course, they timed this exactly to the election. I know the president was watching in real time how the election results were coming in and saw the corruption in real time. That's when he made the executive order, an emergency order on the 2nd. I believe it was on the 2nd that he drew that up and gave the order to collect our computers' database, whatever they are over there in West Germany and Frankfurt. So I'm sure that they have, from what I understand, many conversations from CIA personnel to heads of, Secretary of State, et cetera, many conversations of treason, of sedition. And these need to be released to the American public, and they need to be released in a way that is non-disputable. I want a bipartisan release of this information. I'd like to see the military do that. And that's what I'm hoping that Christopher could be part of that process through military tribunal, whether it's Guantanamo, whatever it is. I don't care, but let's get somebody that the American public can trust definitively to put this information out there and say, listen, this is the way it is. And we have to act on this. This is not, this can no longer be sustained. But to answer your question about Mr. Trump, I think we are far better off with him than without him. I think his interests are aligned with the American public. He's already proven that. He's kept us out of war. And I think that he knows that these vaccines are a scam, are a sham, that this whole COVID thing is nothing more than is a bad strain of flu. And certainly it can affect people that have weakened immune systems in their lungs and so forth. And that is serious. I'm not undermining that. But what I am saying, it's been used as a pandemic, as an agenda. It's been overemphasized for purpose. And these people of power have overstepped, overreached, played their hands out, and it's time for the American people to say, that's enough. We've had it. We're not allowing these illegal orders or these illegal agendas or this false propaganda of this pandemic to circumvent us any longer. We're not going to allow our economies to be destroyed, our homes to be taken from us, or signing any agreement once we're in debt to such a level that we're going to say we can never own anything for the rest of our lives, and you will give us debt relief based upon that transaction. Now we're not citizens any longer. We are slaves. We can own nothing. We can have no power or effect. We have no rights. We are headed there on a bullet train, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, I think having President Trump stay in there is our best course. I think he will discuss the fact that the pandemic has been used for purpose. He's certainly going to have to, if he exposes this in a reality way, leaders around the world are going to fall. I don't see any other way around it. You're going to have to expose all of these individuals and the treason that they've committed not only against our nation, but against their own. And I pray that that's exactly what takes place. We've got to course correct now.
You mentioned early on when you were speaking about the recent action taken with Trump firing Esper from the DOD, and now we have the acting defense secretary in place, Chris Miller. We have the undersecretary also, Ezra Cohen, who they just did their speech this past week in regards to special ops coming under the direct direction of Chris Miller, and so in doing so, enacting Memorandum 57, which we know was written and a focal point for Kennedy in order to put a cap on the CIA. I apologize for my voice. Got a little bit of a sore throat, but in considering the fact that we are seeing these moves made by Trump, we've seen him deregulate the government over the last 4 years. I've read his presidential agenda. We see the foundation that he is trying to lay for a future of this country to be able to retain the power or return the power to the people, and ensure that power can be retained by the people. Along with that, there's a lot of work being done in regards to revamping our systems, our education system. He did just release the executive order on November 2nd, which is the advisory committee for the 1776 focus for our education system. We are seeing the enacting the removal of CIA with special ops and intelligence. Do you feel that that we are in a position now where we would be able to move forward in the second term with ensuring that we can stop these actions that have been in place for many years to take over our country? A lot of people will say it's too late. What's your opinion?
If not now, when? If not now, when? I think that, of course, we have to take these actions now. We have to have the consensus. We're not going to just concede and roll over. I think that obviously a lot of people would hope or want to have the fact that we're just going to go ahead to this digital currency system in January, that we're going to roll over and let the new president come in, and that the votes are going to stand and be certified, and we're going to get this guy out of the White House and everything's going to be fine. I totally, wholly disagree with that. I think that you're asking for you're taking the poison, and it's just going to take effect. You might not die instantly, but you're certainly going to die. So I think that we need to enact and keep enacting these kind of maneuvers. This idea that Christopher came in here is long overdue, in my opinion. Of course, I understand some of the maneuverings for this, but I also understand the American people. You can't gamble with this any longer. You've got to take action. You've got to move quickly, and people need to understand that if you got votes on a rigged voting system, that doesn't make you the president of the United States. That's not how that works. And we need to stick to this, because this election, this outcome is the foundation of who we are, not only as Americans, but who we are as human beings. Who we're going to be, how our future is going to be interpreted, and who's going to be making those choices. And I would strongly recommend that if we do not see a positive effect or a definitive effect very quickly, that we take it into our hands as American citizens and demand that this take place. That we stand together and say, we're not going to go quietly into the night, put the noose around our own neck, and not whisper a word and hang ourselves. I'm not interested in doing that, going out that way, and I'm sure a lot of other Americans feel the same way. So we have to take action now. I'm not advocating violence, but I am advocating a strong urgency and sense of will and action that would give support and foundation in unison for the appropriate steps to be taken by the president, by others, including Christopher Miller, and to do it quickly.
And with that being said, a couple of questions in the chat that I'll combine into one, because the focal point really is, what do we do now? What can we do to help? The question from Starlet and Michelle Z: 3 actions citizens must take now in order to ensure that we can support the quest to ensure our freedoms for the future.
Well, that's a great question, and I'm not entirely prepared to answer correctly, because it's such a extensive and important question. One of the things I think is you've got to tune off and tune out from the U.S. Media. The U.S. media, the popular media, or the is propaganda, total lies. The professionals, and they're being told what to read, and they get paid to say it, and they don't have any integrity. They're maybe not allowed to have integrity. They'd be fired. So one of the first things I'd say is just don't allow that. Don't watch it. Don't allow it to have any consensus in your opinion or any effect on your life, and support those as much as you can that have an open narrative, or a more correct, a real narrative, and give them as much support as you can. The second thing I say is, do not allow yourself to follow the illegal orders, no matter what they are. Hell, if somebody comes up and say, I order you to shoot your neighbor in the head, are you going to do that? All right, I order you to jump off a cliff, are you going to do that? You know, the military understands that if they've taken an oath to defend the Constitution and to take orders to do so, but they're not responsible for taking an illegal order that's causing great catastrophe, that's inhumane and not legal. And we have to act the same way. We can't just blindly follow these people off a cliff because they say so. They're supposed to represent us. We're taking orders from them. Like these governors around the country are gods, and they could just say and do anything they want against the Constitution. Stand up for the Constitution of the United States. Having that Constitution is important. Having that document means something. If it doesn't follow the Constitution, it's not lawful. Don't obey it. And talk to your neighbors and your friends about this, and get them to encourage them to do the same thing. Stand together as much as you can. Unify as much as you can all day.
I agree with that. And I'd like to add my own 2 cents into that, just if you don't mind, just to take a moment and go back to my little Kraken and the interview that you had with her earlier today. She was a little off track when she was speaking about, when she was asked about the mask thing. And I apologize for my dogs. But she is a 9-year-old that, faces the difficulty of walking into stores wherever we go. We're currently under a statewide mandate for masks, but we do not wear masks. She got confused with her zoo face painting and her animal mask. So sorry about that. But she, if a 9-year-old can walk into these stores on a daily basis, wherever we need to go, because it is a statewide mandate at this point for us, and she can hold her head high and refuse to wear that mask, then I would think that, that every adult, and I understand that there are situations where people feel that they need to defend their actions on wearing a mask due to needing medical care, or they feel that it's their only option if they walk into a store. But I really want people to understand and absorb the fact that, one, we have been shown information over and over and over again that these masks are not preventing any viruses or bacteria from spreading. As a matter of fact, they are perpetuating viruses and bacteria. They're making situations worse for some people who already have a compromised immune system, who have compromised breathing issues. So these things are things that we really need to understand and take into consideration, that it doesn't make other people feel better about you wearing a mask when you walk into a store, so you do it for other people. You have to understand that you are communicating that it's okay to comply. It's okay to be complacent in these totalitarian regime rules that they're trying to enforce on us. And if a 9-year-old can stand up and say, no, I'm not doing it, I'm not wearing a mask, and we've been kicked out of stores, we've gone through the gamut of having to stand up for our rights. We've had to take that stance on many occasions. And if a 9-year-old can do that, we can certainly come together as Americans and adults and do the same thing. We can certainly take that stand against what we're facing today. And
There's
I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think there's a lot of individuals that have a comfort. They've been either conditioned or comforted by the fact that they're doing what they're told to do. That's the right thing to do. They're being instructed to do this, and they have a great comfort in that. My problem with this is this. If you go up to a stoplight and you stop at the stoplight and you say, this is the correct thing to do, and you got other people going and going through the light or driving fast or whatever else, and you say, these people are terrible people. They're not paying attention to the rules. They're putting other people at jeopardy and that sort of thing. I understand what your argument is, but if you looked up from the stoplight and you looked way further down the road, you see this great wall of water, this great tsunami coming in that's going to wipe out the entire city. And these people have seen that tsunami, and they're running that light as best and as safe, cautiously as they can, to get themselves and their families to safety, and to protect things that they feel very strongly about. So you can't sit there at the red light and say, this is all I think about, this is all I know, I feel safe and secure in the fact that I'm doing the right thing, and not look further down the road and understand the great consequence of this is you're going to lose your liberty. And so the people that don't wear a mask are trying to make the statement, not only for themselves, but for you, that I care more about your liberty than I do about anything else. It's the number one concern for me and for you. I'm doing this for both of us, but the other people have looked at it a different way. I've got no problem if you want to wear a mask. I've got no problem if you want to paint yourself green. If you want to hop on one leg, if you're told to do that, whatever you want to do, it's your right to do that. What I do have a problem with is you forcing your will upon me. You forcing your agenda or your idea of what's right and wrong upon me. As long as I am not harming anyone else, then I have my rights. And I do not harm you, in my opinion, by not wearing a mask. The mask, as you said, by many experts have been shown to be useless and a waste of time. It's more of a submission to authority than anything else. And nobody wants anybody else to get sick or die. Hell, I've got a good friend in the hospital right now. He's older. It's something different. It's not the COVID-19 or COVID-21 that they're going to come up with later. It's not that. But nobody wants anybody that they care about to be in the hospital or going through pain. So you could support that and give them as much love as you can. But at the same time, I don't want anybody telling my children or me that I can only rise to this level and I can never get past that. And this is what I have to do because that's how I feel comfortable. Your comfort level and my comfort level may be entirely different. My experience of the world and your experience of the world may be entirely different. I'll certainly am willing to discuss this with you rationally and have debate. That's what democracy is for. But I'll be damned if you're going to come at me under threat or anything else and tell me how I'm going to operate my life and how I'm going to operate my children's lives. That is a dividing line. I think most Americans, or at least half Americans in this country, feel very strongly about that. And I agree that that needs to be discussed.
Wonderful answer. I do believe that there are situations right now that we're facing that can exacerbate that division that we're feeling in the country, and I appreciate your approach on that because it can be misunderstood as far as understanding why certain people feel so passionate about not wearing the mask and certain people feel so passionate about wearing the mask. And I do believe that if we can put our differences aside and come together for the focus of why we're faced with these issues in the first place and what we need to do about them would be
exactly
the more helpful route to take.
Right. That division's for purpose. That division's for purpose.
Absolutely.
And the fact of the matter is when the inoculation, the vaccines come out, that's going to make it official. Who got the vaccine, who didn't? Who got the paperwork, who didn't? That's a great divider of this country. Divide and conquer. You ever heard that term?
Oh, yes.
On every chapter of my book, I said, united we stand, divided we fall. You ever heard that? Because that is the foundation of what's being done to this country. They can't attack us militarily, but they could certainly corrupt us and divide us from within and destroy us. And that's exactly the agenda. We can either capitulate, go to like China, we go to this new AI system where everybody's under control, everybody gets monitored 24/7, everybody has a score, whether they're a good citizen or good subject or not, good communist member or not. Or we can say no to this and say this is the United States of America. We're still standing on free ground that was paid for by the blood of people that came before us. We're the ancestors of those individuals, and we refuse to give ground to those who want to take it from us. It's never going to stop. If you shut the door tomorrow, they're still going to come at you another way. If you shut the door the next day, they're going to come at you this way. They've wanted to destroy this country since it was founded. This isn't new. It's just a more technologically advanced and more money-powered attempt. And people need to recognize this for what it is. They've got to make a decision. They've got to choose freedom or slavery. And I know that's hard for people to get themselves there. Harold, it was very difficult for me to go from a free person worth quite a bit of money at the time that I had some money and some success to go to someone that was in prison in a maximum security and chained up all over the country and given no rights, and not allowed my lawyer to go in and be debriefed for the intelligence community and the Justice Department. It took a hell of a lot of change in personality and perseverance to survive all of that. But believe me, it happens quite quickly. Give an inch, they'll take 100 miles. Now, all of a sudden, now I'm a captor that has to adhere to rules 24 hours a day. I'm lucky to survive. And people think, well, maybe you deserve that. You went to prison. There was some reason. Do you think Julian Assange deserves to be in prison by trying to bring truth to the American public and to the world? Do you think he deserves that? Do you think Snowden deserves to be stuck over in Russia with his life threatened by people in the United States because he wanted to tell you the truth about what the NSA was doing illegally and not with the permission of the American people or the oversight of Congress? Do you think they deserve what they're getting? If you do, then I guess you're one of the people that also feels that more comfortable with being told what to do, and it finds great comfort in that, doing the right thing as part of a group. And your individuality and strength has been removed from you by whether that be propaganda or time or whatever else that they've done to breed this spirit out of us. Most of the American spirit has been crushed in many ways by war, by putting them in prison, by assassination. And we've lost a great many of our men and women that are strong enough to have stood up to this. So we need to fill that gap. The ones that are still here, we need to stand up and be that strength now.
I want to switch directions a little bit, if you don't mind. We have talked about this off air, and we touched on it a little bit in the beginning when we started this live. But in considering where we are right now with the current election, and knowing full well that the voter fraud is a legitimate issue, a legitimate concern, and has been for many, many years. And the fact that we are in a position right now where we are focusing more on revealing that voter fraud instead of focusing on I'll call them faux processes, or the fail-safe processes that are in place to get the American public to believe that it was misconstrued or debunked information by going through these recount processes and so on and so forth. Knowing full well that we've had these issues for many decades now in regards to elections, and looking back over the last 57 years in regards to how our presidents have been elected or selected. And then considering the fact that we have had a lot of focus recently on how fraud vitiates everything, that fraud would basically eliminate the process of this election and others based on the fact that you can provide evidence that there's voter fraud. That reminds me, or brings me back to something that was written in your book about a gentleman that you were incarcerated with that had a relationship with John Jr., where they reference the fact that that could these things be proven as far as treason or voter fraud or fraudulent activity with our administrations, that we could be looking at reversing time, so to speak, or removing all actions from previous administrations based on the fraudulent activity that they took part in. How do you feel that plays a role now with what we're facing on this disclosure with voter fraud, especially in relation to the fact that we are focusing on the CIA being involved?
Yeah, that is a very important question you just asked, and of course, one comes to think of this and say, where's the stop loss? Or do we have a stop loss? how far do you want to go with this? And obviously, from a great legal mind that briefed me while I was in prison, who was not only worked with the agency, but had worked as he was a Secret Service agent that was there to protect John in New York. That was his unofficial position, his job. He was actually in charge of the Secret Service protection of VIPs through the airport there at JFK Airport. But unofficially, he was there to his job was to protect John. Of course, they put him in prison too. How convenient. But the fact of the matter is that he had said, from a lawyer's perspective, and the possibility of opening up this Pandora's box is something that scares the hell out of these people because they don't know where the stop loss is. You bring somebody like Hillary Clinton under indictment, of course she's going to enact the fact that she's worked with the agency and all these other things she's going to do, and then she's going to, if they pass through that process, then who does she turn on, and where do the information go from there? How far does it reach? Does someone like Colin Powell go to prison? Where does it stop? And so they're scared that they don't want to set any precedent of this. They don't want to arrest a U.S. senator or a former president or something like. They don't know where this will. They don't have any idea how to proceed. And so that question is an incredibly current and relevant, maybe one of the most important questions that we have of our time at the moment. Are we going to operate on a stop loss? Are we going to come out, reveal certain information, prosecute on that level, and at least get that part of it going so that we can get on with the next stage of another 4 years or another going in the correct direction for the American people instead of slavery? Or are we going to try to unleash the whole, open the whole box? Now, the fear of that is the government will fall. It will collapse. And then you've got foreign governments that could come in, try to take advantage of that situation, the chaos of it. But if the military takes over this, maybe that it's possible to do this. And that's why it's so important for someone like Christopher Miller. How far is he going to go with this? How far he's going to be allowed to operate? I don't have the answers to that, but by God, I sure am excited to see what the conclusion of this or how this is going to proceed. We need to start somewhere. You can't expect the American people to swallow any more of this. We are at the breaking point now. We've had enough. And believe me, when you get a mother who loves her children, the mama bear, or good people, and you push them past the limit, you're going to see all hell break loose because these people are good people that want peace, are usually quiet to themselves, and you get them past the point where they have no return, I think you're going to see an America like you've never seen before. You're going to see a fight. And so we need to make these kind of decisions carefully. Are we going to have a stop loss? How much? Where is that stop loss going to be? How far back are we going to go? For me personally, President Kennedy, I don't need to resolve that. Of course, I spent many, many years in prison trying to answer the questions for the American public and give them a lot of the truth of that. But I want to see what's going on right now affects the population of the world right now to have the effect that's the correct direction, the right choices, because we're at the very edge of the precipice. We make the wrong choice, we fall over. We go off the cliff, we get damaged enough, we're not getting back up. You've got to make those right choices now to follow a direction that takes us to a better place, to get us out of this, the edge that we're tilting on, quivering on right now. And that's why I'm so concerned about the election. I'm so concerned about these inoculations. I'm so concerned about the agendas that they're using with this COVID to enact this AI control system and putting us all into a position of slavery and demolishing our Constitution and doing this, which they pretty much have to do. So if the stop loss has to occur, we're only going back so far, and we're getting off that precipice, and we're moving forward. So be it. But let's get off that precipice and go in the right direction, for God's sake. Let's not fall over the cliff. That's the most important thing to me personally right now.
In knowing how difficult it has been for President Trump to succeed the last 4 years, basically considering that at least 90% of his administration has been working against him. And I think that we've been seeing that over the course of the last 4 years in slow drops, as we're seeing what's happening within his administration and the people that he's had to eliminate. Now we're seeing that in greater strength, especially with the recent firing of Mark Esper, and that pertains to our military and our Defense Department. With that being said, how do you feel that the military will play a role here, if they will play a role in regards to the voter fraud or the election process?
Well, I think the good military, yeah, I think the military is pissed off. I mean, talk to the people that were in Benghazi. Talk to the people that said you have to take your orders, stand down, take your orders from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. She's not the chain of command. Ask how those guys feel about it when our people representing us abroad have been mowed down. Ask these guys in SEAL Team 6. Ask people in the military how they feel they've been used and abused and thrown out to the wolves. I think they're pretty damn pissed off. I think they're pretty damn happy that they've got someone like Christopher Miller in that position that he is now. I hope they unleash the chains on him and let him operate properly, because I think they're ready to go. I think they're long overdue. I think we need to know where the gold went that was stolen out of Libya. I think we need to know where the gold went out of the towers. Of course, these things that I'm saying are dangerous questions, because the people that won the day, whether it be the Kennedy assassination or all these other treasonous, terrible things that they've done, they win the day by threat, intimidation, murder. So anybody who wants to talk out about these type of things is under great threat. Like I say, these individuals, these lawyers that are up there trying to bring you the truth, listen, give them the benefit of the doubt. Support them. If they bring you the truth and you can see it for yourself, then at least we're on the same page. We're looking at what we're looking at, right? If they don't have it, then you know that that it doesn't exist or whatever else, if that's what your opinion of it is. But personally, I know that it does exist. I've seen it. I've seen some of it years ago. I know that it went into the president, the executive office, and I know where it went in the Justice Department. I know where it went to Giuliani. And I've seen these hearings that we have, and where they get up there and they question people. Hell, I know more about it than the questioning of people in the hearings that we have in the U.S. hearings. This is a joke to the American public. It's a farce. So give these people some support. Let them, they're risking their lives to do this. I risked my life to do what I was trying to do. I failed, but I tried, and I'm trying now to give you at least give you the information of what happened. Everybody wants to tear you down. Everybody wants to say it doesn't matter, or it doesn't, who cares? It's not important, or they're lying, or whatever other stuff they want to say. What do you think? People are out here doing this for fun? I've lost people I love. It's not a joke.
Yes.
I'm trying to do this because I care.
To focus on when we
Yeah.
see people who still want to question, in my opinion, opinion piece here only, but when people still want to question the actions of our president and the risks versus the rewards that he is taking in regards to what he's trying to do for this country, it's almost laughable at this point that people still try and convince you that it's all for show and he's working for the deep state. It's quite laughable, as a matter of fact. So I'd like to shift focus for just a little bit, because I've seen some things in the chat, and I want to make sure that we do involve the chat and the people who have been dedicated to this channel in particular, but our very interested in everything that you have to say, Christopher. And I know that I've had many, 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 many messages telling me how you've moved them, what you have to say, and your passion for this country is unmatchable. They relate it to being a Kennedy, as a matter of fact. So they really want to hear your insight and your words on this information. And I want to make sure that we take a few moments to address some things that I saw in the chat. And this isn't anything new, but if you could maybe provide some insight, your insight on the relationship between JFK and Marilyn Monroe.
What I've been exposed to is the fact that Marilyn and others, because of their status, because of who they were, and people wanted to please them, they wanted to be around them, they wanted to have access to them. The president decided to use these people in conjunction with our national security operations to help circumvent the agendas of people like the CIA, the agencies, and so forth, and use these people that he trusted to get him information directly. Now, this infuriated Pentagon, infuriated the CIA to no end. It was, there's a code to how all this works, and the president was breaking that code because he was looking for any way to make things better, not worse. When you're given a rules and these rules are lead to your demise, what do? Well, you try to go around those rules and say, how do I do this for the benefit of the good? And so people like Marilyn Monroe were utilized for that, and unfortunately, she was killed, which is a shame. Many other people have died in this process as well. But people that were in the press corps that President Kennedy respected, people that were in Hollywood, which he was familiar with because of his father, and others were utilized to talk to people in the power directly and to circumvent, because he was being listened to. He was the most listened to and watched person in history at that time. He could not make a move without the intelligence people knowing what he was doing. So Bobby and himself were doing the best they could to circumvent that, going to people they trusted, getting information back and forth. Maybe you want to call it the rumor network or whatever, but in this case, it was actual factual, and utilizing that for purpose. This is something that has not really been touched on or discussed at all, because they don't want you to know that individuals that love their country put themselves on the line, just as the president did, and that were murdered in this process. This is something that has not been discussed very much at this level yet, but I hope that someday it will be.
It seems as if there was a quest to discredit and really dishonor President Kennedy, and it was a two birds with one stone approach from my perspective, because it seems as if you can taint the relationship between Marilyn Monroe and President Kennedy and allude to the information as being in the nature of an affair, an illicit affair, that President Kennedy was more of a playboy, and if you have that impression, especially if you weren't privileged to be here when he served our country, and you don't really have that firsthand information. And it seems that there's been a concerted effort to make it seem as if his priorities were more from a playboy perspective, and that is why he had the relationship with Marilyn Monroe, than focusing on what he was trying to do for our country and what she was possibly doing for our country as well.
Well, Pierre had said something. Pierre had said something to the effect that, if the man, you want to print something about the man having a relationship with somebody, or whether it's appropriate or not appropriate, whatever, but he's out there dealing with issues that are so beyond the average conception of trying to keep this world sane, keep us out of a nuke war, so that we have a future. Overwhelming things that the president was trying to do. Do you really think that that's really the thing, what you want to focus on? And so the press understood that at the time, that they had some respect for the man. My understanding, from the people who were there that I've spoke with, the press had a lot of respect for President Kennedy, his press conference and so forth. Very impressive man, and so therefore the press took their position at that point to respect him on that, and not to indulge too much in his private life. Now, was the man a saint? I don't think he was saintly, but I think as a someone who cared about the people of this country and cared about our future, I don't think there's anybody that was better at that. And someone that moved people and showed the true spirit of who we are to the world, I don't think there was anything one better than President Kennedy.
Yes, as great of a leader as he was and dedicated to our country, he was a human being, just like the rest of us, and that's what made him great as well. He didn't put himself on a pedestal or didn't view himself as above the American people. He was with the American people.
How many people would get into? How many people would go to Dallas, Texas, to shore up his, trying to get the parties in line for the next, obviously Lyndon was going to be out. He was trying to get the parties in line for his 64 bid. And he was making moves that were going to be dramatic. It was going to change the course of the world, try to end the Cold War, try to get some sanity, try to get some control of this before it got out of hand. How many men would take that on and say, well, they're certainly gunning for me. I understand that. My life's on the line, but I'm going to do whatever's necessary 24 hours a day to accomplish this because it's worth it. The American people are worth it. The world, the peace in the world is worth it. And if I have to die for that, then that's the price that I have to pay. He knew this. And he paid the ultimate price for it. And then people want to say all these things. You can't give any greater gift than to lay down your life for others. Believe me. I've watched it happen in front of me. That's as good as it gets.
I agree with you. In relation to what you were speaking about earlier, with the National Archives being compromised and information, intel being removed and replaced, another thing that was mentioned in the chat that I want to relate this to, because I want people to really understand and absorb the fact that even though you are given information that seems to be in line with what you believe occurred, that everything can be a manipulation. And we spoke about this recently in regards to even the Zapruder film was edited for a purpose. Information that has been provided to us over the course of the last 57 years, most of it has been tainted with some sort of editing or some sort of agenda attached to it as far as why it's been given to the public. There seems to be a misconception out there, or a misconception from my point of view anyway, that Jackie was somehow involved in this. And I'd like for you to
let's not get bent out on that. Jackie had been horrified by what she saw in the original film and said it made a statement to the effect that she didn't want to ever see that again. No, they took that as an open-ended instruction that they had the right to alter that film if necessary because Jackie didn't want to see it again in the public. So
sure.
That's a stretch. But the fact of the matter remains is that there was information that the public has not seen that shows that Lyndon Johnson was complicit. This was filed with the AG of Texas 4 days after the assassination took place. The intent was to pull Lyndon Johnson out of the White House and to put an interim government in effect until they could get this straightened out and remove Lyndon Johnson. Now, this item was pulled back. The AG had gone into the White House They had met in the same swimming pool that the president had used for his bath in the White House, and they had decided with the CIA that that document would be classified. A composite was made of 2 films, and that's what you see for the public to get. That is not the complete and correct image that you see. And people like Jackie and Robert Kennedy and others were well aware at what had happened to the president, that they were just put into a position and overwhelmed, and they had to capitulate to an overwhelming situation where the world order and our safety as Americans were at stake. And so they had to capitulate to that. Of course, Bobby Kennedy had run his own investigation. He knew the truth. He was going to present that evidence when he got to the presidency in '68, but they killed him. Of course, his instructions were to Evelyn Lincoln, President Kennedy's secretary, that if he did not make it, that evidence was to remain with her for the rest of her life, which, to her credit, is exactly what happened. She never talked about it. She never caved. And then some of the more important evidence actually transferred to me before she died. But that's some of the story that I hope to get out later. I've only got about 50% or 60% of the story out in my book. I was lucky to get it out to begin with. I had somebody from Washington that had to come out and vet me and tell me how I could, what I could do and so forth before I could even get that out. But the fact of the matter is, it is out. I'm proud that at least I got the book written for my children so that it doesn't fall upon them later on in life. And I'm proud to at least honor my mother and JFK Jr. and others with the truth, that can stand as a testament of what happened, because I think I'm one of the only people left alive. If I hadn't gone to prison, they would have killed me. They tried to assassinate me and kill me before I went to prison. They almost succeeded. I was DOA at the scene. Somehow I lived by the grace of God. I don't know how. And then they had to go through the whole process with me, which they just hated. They'd rather put a bullet in my head, believe me. But I went through the whole process. It was terrible. And I had to capitulate or stay in that freaking maximum security place for 20 years. Like other people in there still were and have told me they've been there that long. This is the way our government operates. On a national security level, you are not treated to a fair and equitable rights, constitution, the proper use of your attorney, and so forth. You're forced into submission. They have no legal right to do what they're doing, but they force you into a position where you have no choice but to capitulate and to plead guilty to a charge, and then to proffer. A lot of those guilty pleadings are proffer sessions. They never see a courtroom. You got a 98, 99% conviction rate in the federal government. How does that happen? You think they're that capable and competent? They're not. They're just thugs. And they understand how the process works. And once you see that process for yourself and you go through that, and they threaten your family, and they kill people, you understand how these thugs, how these terrible people operate. We need to get rid of this. We need to get rid of these people in power that allow this to happen, and get back to a country of law and order and decency and civility and rights and freedoms.
It's amazing how it's, when you consider the systems within our government, that the prison system is the one that seems to be the most successful. And that's not by accident, as far as their ability to investigate and determine someone's guilty and convict them for it.
I'm going to say this, and it's sad that I have to say this. I'm just going to mention this. But I have someone that I know that is very honorable, has been working diligently for this country behind the scenes, and was willing to trade dirt that would have been horrific, so horrific the American people probably couldn't have stomached it, for the release of Julian Assange, and he was voted against by the Democrats. They would not, one vote, they wouldn't let him do it. But they almost did it. These are the kind of deals that have to be made, and believe me, they're disgusting. The American public has little idea of what happens behind the scenes and what it takes to get anything done for them. So I ask again for the support of the American public and for the people of the world. Help us. Help yourself. Help your family.
Christopher, can you, I know you wrote about this in your book, but I'm not sure everyone understands it. Can you explain the proffer process that you went through, the reasons for it and what it accomplishes as far as subverting justice?
They really wanted to they thought that I was going to capitulate quickly. They figured that this, my lifestyle, whatever it was, that I was going to fold and roll over. But I took an attitude that when they put me on those planes, that flew me all over the country in chains, and destroyed my life, I figured, well, if this is how it's going to be, then I'm not going to roll over that easily, and we're going to have to fight this out. So for 1 year with the Justice Department, with this maximum security, I was being held in a horrific, terrible place. Terrible. People die in this facility. And so therefore, what the conclusion was is I was not going to capitulate. They wanted me to turn over material, including recordings in the White House. And I would not see an inside of a courtroom. And I said, no, I'm not turning over those materials to you. And so they kept me at great threat in there. And then they threatened my family. They went after my family. And it wasn't veiled. They sent agents down to my grandparents' farm. They got their mortgage, the title on their farm. And they put it in front of me and they said, we're going to confiscate this whole farm. We're going to take it away from them, put them on the street. I said, how can you do that? They said, because you had given them a couple $100 at one point. We could show it's proceeds of crime. We're going to take the whole thing. Then we're going to indict your father. Then we're going to bring your mother under subpoena. She's going to try to protect you. If she says it's gray, we say it's black. We have enough on her. We're going to put her in prison. So I capitulated and said, what do you want me to do? And they said, well, you have got to be debriefed. You're not going to go into a courtroom. You're going to go in there without an attorney. You're going to go into the debrief. You're going to tell us everything you know under oath, under penalty of perjury. And you're going to answer any question that the intelligence community, the military, or the Justice Department wants to ask you. So I had to agree to this with no attorney, go in. That was the proffer session. I'm proffering information on things that I know against myself and under oath. And then I get vetted by the CIA and by the FBI. FBI vets everything I say. If I lie, I go to jail for 50 years. If I tell them the truth and they do go through the investigation of this process, then I'm allowed to go in front of a judge and get my time that they're going to ask for these charges for tax, not following the tax code of the United States, which is reporting requirements within the United States. Any U.S. citizen, no matter where they are in the world, is required, whether you're dual national or not, is required to report and pay taxes within the United States. If you're outside of the United States and you're paying taxes abroad, you still have to have a tax agreement you still have to pay taxes with the United States. I did not do that. I was paying taxes in Canada. So therefore, they came after me for that. And then they claimed that the bank that I was doing business with, because I didn't give my correct information on my income within the United States, that was fraudulent. And anytime I used money from that bank, it was fraudulent. Anytime I used my credit card from that bank, it was another count, another fraudulent count. This is the kind of things that they utilize. And so this proffer, they wanted to ask me questions about Russia. They had photographs of me in the Kremlin. They wanted to talk to me about who was involved in this Kennedy business, what the information that I had, what they were, what I was going to use it for, who had been contacted, what was President Reagan's intent in this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they wanted all this done before the Bush election. So they had to get it done before. I knew they had to get it done before the Bush election. They had slipped and told me this, or I got it through my attorney. So anyway, the fact of the matter is, I was able to hold out. I had to sit in a horrible place for a year, terrible. And then they brought me in to do this, and then I was able to get my time and do my time in federal prison. The other thing people don't understand is that I got two sentences. Sometimes they look up in the Washington Post or something. These guys, they think they're real bright. And they say, well, he only got 27 months. On the first sentence, I had multiple sentences. But they don't know about that because most of my stuff is sealed. People want to make accusations or they want to think they know something about something, but just because I can't talked about it yet or haven't been able to discuss it doesn't mean that they know everything about it. They don't. I actually filed an appeal, which I knew would fail, but they couldn't covertly bury that appeal. I did that just to show what was taking place, and that is a public record. But again, a lot of these things I want to get to and I want to discuss openly, but I'm not there yet. I want to do it to the largest audience that I can get, and I want to probably do it through film. But this, I'm under contract, and I can't say everything about this yet.
Okay. I don't know if you're aware of the assignment that the Supreme Court made of the 9 justices to various circuit courts. These circuit courts will probably hear some of the Trump team's appeals when they lose in the local courts. Do you have any comment on that system and the court system overall? Do you have any confidence that this election fraud will get resolved through the court system favorably?
Well, this is a great test, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it's a great test. You're going to go in there and present corruption on a almost global scale, and then these judges are going to have to decide: Am I taking this on? Am I going to put myself on record? Am I going to do this? And if I do, what's going to happen to me, my career, my family?
Exactly.
Are they going to deny this totally and say we're going to let these declarations of states stand and let this get going by the Biden way rather than the Trump way? How are they going to do this? This is one of the great moments in history where individuals are going to show their merit. They're going to say, am I going to make the right choice for history? I'm going to make the human choice. I'm going to make the business choice. And I'm not going to allow this to be known to the American public. If any collusion, sedition, treason has been involved in this process, the American people need to know this. I don't care if it's 1 vote or 10 billion votes. It doesn't matter. The American people need to understand this. So the right decision for any of these court justices is to do the correct thing and to make aware of the fact that this took place. Period. Anything other than that is a horrendously wrong decision for history.
Okay. Do you think that they're going through this process just so they can expose everything to the public to make it all public record?
Well, that's a logical conclusion, that you get to this point to force an exposure. And the question is now, are they going to be successful in this? They really are. This is a great test of humanity right now. We are in the great moment of history of our time. Is the powers that be going to be overcome the David and Goliath story, and truth, regardless of whether you like that truth or you don't like that truth, will prevail? If it's not allowed to prevail, then what do we have? What kind of country do we have? What kind of world are we going to have? And who are we as humanity? Again, I will reach out to any of these individuals through my voice here. Think about the future of the country and the world and what you represent. Do the right thing. Do the correct thing. I know it's not easy. I've been there. It's devastating. But at the same time, what choice do you have? You have to do the right thing.
Okay. And another question. Do you see a way forward outside the court system for Trump and the team to resolve this, expose it, and deliver a huge major blow to the deep state, the cabal, whatever you want to call it?
Well, there may be a vote in the House. They might go to that, or one vote per state. It could go to the Supreme Court. It's hard to. I'm not a constitutional attorney. This really is. These are deep questions for the legal minds of our time, and but I think that there's no greater question that we have right now than how this is going to be resolved. This is more important than the presidency. This goes way beyond the presidency of the United States. This goes on to how we are going to continue as humanity in the world. And so if we get this wrong, we're in trouble. This is the time to get it right. And so these people are fighting, like I said, no matter what side of this you fall on, they are fighting for transparency and a chance to not reset it for corruption, not reset it for slavery, but reset it for the freedom for all of us to continue walking in the light. And we're all witnesses to this. We are all part of this. Whether you're on the front row of it or whether you're halfway around the world, this event is taking place in real time right in front of us.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of the most important points in history. We don't realize it now, but it's going to be, no matter which way this goes. Do you see law enforcement or the military having a part in going forward?
I've asked some of the military people that I know whether they would go against the Constitution and ever go to task against the American public. They have responded they will not. They have taken an oath and they will not do that. Now, that's not to say that the powers that be may try to bring in foreign troops or do whatever other underhanded thing they could do to diminish this country. The task is to put this country under submission, to make it capitulate to a new system, a new reset, a new order. If you think this is a joke, go back to Mr. Bush. Go back to when he was speaking when he left the Oval Office. Go back to when he was in the Oval Office and say, listen, this new world order is going to happen. Whether it's on my watch or on the next watch, it's going to happen. This is not a joke for them. They believe in it. And so we have to believe in ourselves. Because believe me, the new world order for the rest of us is not the utopia it's going to be for the few. I believe that the military is a huge part of this. I believe the intelligence services and the military services are at odds. And I think that this battle has been going on for quite some time. And I think you have to give the military the chance to operate and given orders from the correct source rather than the corrupted source. And that's our chance we have now with Christopher Miller.
Yeah, I was heartened to see that situation with getting rid of Esper and putting him in charge, and then Ezra and some of the other people that he put in. I was heartened by that move. So hopefully that'll pave the way forward. I guess to me, I feel like this needs to be in the criminal arena, because this election fraud, and I think we all know, or we should know, that it's been going on for ages. We know about the ballot stuffing in 1948 for Johnson in Texas, and it just evolves based on the technology that's out there. So now we have it done through the computer systems and the algorithms and all those things that have been exposed by Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani and their team. So hopefully all the Americans and everyone around the world, because it seems like that's been used against other people in other countries to fix elections, which is not surprising, that they wake up and they can do something in their own countries in addition to us leading the charge here in our own country. Okay, we've been going for 3+ hours. I hate to take up any more of your time to keep you away from your wife and family. Do you have any parting shots you want to give to the audience before we wrap this up?
I just think on this day we should, remember what President Kennedy had tried to do and did for this country. What his brother did to take up the flag when the colors fell from him, and how he picked it up for the American public, and what happened to him, what happened to Martin Luther King and the civil rights peaceful situation in the civil rights in the 60s. And we need to honor these individuals and other individuals that have given everything, given all, our military abroad, that have been ordered to do things, and they shouldn't have been there. And they held people that they were entrusted, women and men, and watched them die for for intelligence that wasn't correct, while the people in the power laughed in our country. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. And that's not what we should accept. So I think on this day, we reflect on the people that have given all, and think about who we are, what our place in this is. And I think that's what this day means to me. And I certainly think from your opening speech, what your memories were, it means that to you and to many Americans. I want to see us go forward. I want to see our families be safe, and I want to see us be proud of who we are. So I thank you for having me here to speak about that today. And I appreciate both of you so much as great Americans, and trying to sacrifice your time and effort to bring whatever truth you can to the American public for their bettering of information. President Kennedy said, I trust the American people when they're given correct information. And one of our big problems in this national security state we have now is we have been lied to consistently. We've got to stop this.
Well,
So
I
thank
agree.
you for having me on.
I agree, and I know I can speak for myself. I am honored to be, I hope, your friend. We've had a lot of talks in private, and you are the shining light up on top of the hill. You are a true patriot. You've gone through more than any person should have to go through, and you are still in the game. You're still out there trying to spread the truth, and you are, in my mind, a true patriot, and you are the example of what a true patriot does.
Well, heroes aren't made, they're cornered. Nobody wants to be the one died on the battlefield, but the people that survive, like I survived in my endeavors, you just try to do what you earn it. Try to do what you can to help and to honor the people that didn't make it back. And so I appreciate your kind words, and I thank you for having me be able to speak today.
Well, you know what they say, warriors die on the battlefield. They don't die in some rest home or nursing home. So that's always the way I felt about it. If there's still a war to be fought, there's still a battle. The warriors don't ever stop, no matter how old or what the situation is, and you've proven that without a shadow of a doubt. So my hat's off to you. I just admire everything that you've done and the sacrifices that you have made and continue to make to try to make this world a better place for everybody, including the children that will come after you. So I can't thank you enough, Christopher.
Those are kind words. Thank you, Paladin. I appreciate that.
Lady Justice, would you like to say a few parting shots?
Of course. I obviously wanted to tell Christopher, thank you so much for coming on today. It was an incredible opportunity for us, and we were so thankful that you were willing to come on and share so much insight and so much information. This is information that every American should listen to. Everyone in the world should hear your words and the wisdom that you share with us. I'd also like to say, and this goes along with the question that was in the chat about if you are in the process or planning on writing another book in the future. And I want to make sure that we can communicate to people in the chat and people who watch the stream afterwards how hard you are working to try and make sure that you can get all of your information out to people. And I think that gets overlooked a little bit when we're focusing so much on the topics at hand, that you have so much more that you are wanting to share, and that has to be in the right setting at the right time. And your goal is to reach the maximum amount of people that you can reach in order to share that information. The book has an incredible amount of information. It has more than what you would be expecting if you just make sure you read carefully and you look a little bit on your own, do a little bit of your research on your own. You can put pieces together in the book that are very important. But there is, I know that Christopher is working on a project to try and get all of his information out and do so in a manner where it can reach many, many people at once. So the impact is there, and we can move forward together, united as a country, to take action on what's been done to us.
Appreciate you saying all that. And yes, I'm working every day in the attempt to last year, specifically very hard to get a film, whether that be a documentary or a feature, out so that most people could see it. It's not, again, this isn't about it's about trying to do the best good, the highest service that I can, and just get people to know. And again, they can do their homework on their own and research things. I welcome that. I'm always open to debate people on the hard questions and the tough issues. That's part of our democracy. That's part of our process. But the things that I was exposed to from the White House, from the Kennedy presidency, and what happened to me subsequently is part of the official narrative of the United States, and it does need to be talked about. And so therefore, I'm really hoping that I can get the rest of that information out as soon as possible. And I am working, again, very hard to do so. But thank you for mentioning all that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And in doing so, when you read the book and you do your research on your own, you will find a lot of information that collaborates what's in the book, that supports what Christopher has to say, and then some. You can find a lot of information that will kind of tie the pieces together as to where we are in this country today. And I would like to also just give a little plug here when we're asking if there's a book in the future for you, Christopher. Your wonderful wife, Michelle, co-wrote this book with you. And again, everyone in the chat, please go to cmfulton.com. I'll put the link in the chat again. purchase your book through Christopher directly, so you can get a signed copy of that book. And Michelle is a co-author on that book as well. And Michelle is working on a book that will be released next year, and it entails not information about JFK, but it does include information that was near and dear to all of us, which can be trials and tribulations that you can experience in regards to family and family life, and medical obstacles that we've all either known someone who's experienced or we've experienced ourselves. And Michelle is a wonderful, wonderful person. She's definitely the backbone for Christopher, and we hope to have her on when the release of her book is out or close to being out. We hope to have her on this channel, and hopefully my Lady Justice channel as well. She is an incredible person. So these are two people who are doing everything they can every day to ensure that the public has access to information that's needed, that they're doing what they can to help this country, to mend this country, and to protect our futures for every American, for their family. And we should all be doing the same. So thank you again for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And we really appreciate the opportunity that Little Kraken got earlier today. Super excited.
Well, thank you.
I think we've put the bug in her now. We've got a problem.
I think she had it already. She gets it in her genes, her genetics. But yeah, thank you for all of that. I appreciate we're talking about my wife. She is. God, I prayed every day whether if I could survive to meet someone like her, and I was. She is the better half of me, and she has made me a much better person, a human being. And so, therefore, I thank you for that, and I appreciate that being able to talk to your little girl. And again, I wish her a very, very happy birthday today.
Thank you so much.
Okay, guys, I do appreciate you taking up a good part of your Sunday afternoon to spend time with us. That's you, Christopher, you, Lady Justice, and everybody that has tuned in today. I think this is a very important day for obvious reasons. We've discussed those. I would urge everybody to go back and pull out the Constitution and read it. Rekindle that feeling that the founders had when they came over to this country and got tired of the tyranny of the British and wanted to establish a country that was free, because there's no other country in the world like this one. There's no other country in the world that has a constitution like we have. So take some time to read it. It doesn't take long. It's not very long. It's pretty succinct. It's pretty to the point, and it's pretty direct. And so get that feeling that they had in 1776 and read the Constitution, read some of the Federalist Papers, read some of their opinions about what they thought this country would be, because that Constitution was written over 200 years ago, but it still applies to today, and it will always apply. So I want to thank everybody again for spending your Sunday with us. And another happy birthday to Little Kraken. We're glad that she was able to come in and spend some time with us. She's now an honorary white hat, and I know she will carry on the tradition that we've laid down. And I guess that's it. Paladin out.